What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the third episode of Kinda Anime, your dedicated anime podcast from us here at KindaFunny. I'm Barrett Courtney, and I'm joined today by the Lemillion to my Sun Eater, Mike Howard, Snowbike Mike. Mikey, how you doing today?
I'll tell you what, Barrett, every time I hear that, it makes me smile.
Yeah.
I am happy to be back. It's awesome to be on the orange and purple set once again.
Yeah.
And it's good to talk some anime. It's nice to catch up.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see where this episode takes us.
I like the the quarterly kind of release of Kinda Anime. I know a lot of the fans out there, shout out to everybody who's been watching so far for the first two episodes. They want it more frequently and all this stuff, and I understand the need. But it's nice to kind of like have the anime like kind of just pent up inside you and just let it all out once every couple of months. So.
Yeah, it's nice when we don't check in. I mean, we're always checking in, like, what are we watching and stuff like that. But, it is nice to, like, build it all up and be like, where did your journey take you these past couple of months? Because my journey this time, when we talk about this, completely different. And I'm excited to share it with you.
I'm excited to hear about it. Before we get into that, though, we want to thank you for making this show possible. If you don't know, Kinda Anime exists because of your support on Patreon. We're back in October. We fundraised for the continued future of Kinda Funny, and one of the goals we hit was 4 episodes of this very show where we have a home to talk about all things anime. So that means we're almost done with Kinda Anime's short run. Our final episode later this year is going to be a fun one, though. So still stay tuned right here on youtube.com/KindaFunny or the Kinda Funny screencast feed on podcast services around the globe. Now, to pull the curtain back a little bit, we're recording this part of the show in kind of a time capsule. We're recording this on July 18th, but this episode isn't going out to people for a few weeks. I think in my head right now it's August 9th is when this episode's gonna come out. So when we talk about some of the things that are airing weekly, you might be like, oh, well, they're only talking about the first 2 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen season 2. Why is that? Well, that's why we're recording it in kind of a weird order this time around, but that'll be clear of why in just a few minutes here. So we also have like the rigmarole and all that stuff, and it's weird because this is July, but this is coming out in August, so this is going to be a nice test for me in the future when I edit this episode, if I'll remember to put this stuff in. So we want to shout out our Patreon producers for the month of August. You can watch the shows ad-free along with our other Patreon supporters. They all help keep the mics and lights on here at Kinda Funny, and that is Jedi Master Deadpool, James Hastings, Casey Andrew, Logan Delaney, Nathan Lamoth, and Patrick Delgado. And then speaking of ads, Kinda Anime is brought to you by Shady Rays and Liquid IV. But we'll tell you about that later. For now, Mikey, it's been a few months. I know there's, when it comes to the weekly seasonal anime and stuff, I don't know if there's been as much stuff for you and I to get really into. So I'm really fascinated to hear what you've been watching.
You know what, Barrett? I'm going to take you on a little bit of a ride because
take me on a ride,
it has been very interesting of when we talk about episode 1 and episode 2, I felt like we had a clear idea, right? Of like, hey, what you been watching? Oh, I like One Piece. I'm watching a lot of that. Oh, I love My Hero, right?
Yeah.
But like, One Piece is a different conversation for later, but like, we're caught up with My Hero, right? And then I was introduced into Fooly Cooly, which was a great time, right? We started.
Yeah, we had no homework for this episode.
Yeah, we had homework, but this time we didn't, right? And it was kind of like up in the air where I would go. And the last time we spoke, we went to the movie screener of course, the season 3 opener of Demon Slayer. And I thought, man, maybe I'll get into that. But you know what? This time away has actually taken me down somewhere different. I started reading the One Piece manga, which was really, really exciting because it was so interesting of like, I'm watching so much One Piece and I'm consumed by One Piece. I really love it that I was like, you know what? Why don't I give it a try? Let's see what the reading is all about. Let's see what the vibe is like. Because as you know, I've bought a lot of My Hero books, never read them. I've got Spy Family books, never read them. Got Chainsaw Man books, never read them.
It's nice to have them, but I've collected, I think, all of the My Hero like books that are out in the US, but I haven't gone back to them because I also have the Viz app where I'm like reading weekly and all that stuff.
Correct. And so that was the catch, was like, where do you start with One Piece, Bear, right? Like, with you and I, we've been on the journey. So it's not like I'm on episode 1 of this manga. I am on book 100 and whatever, right?
So you didn't go all the way back to the beginning. You started from...
So I did go to the beginning because I didn't...
Jesus.
I had this... I was playing the juggling game of like, I guess I'm on book 40 or, whatever it may be, high up in the numbers. where do I want to go? And I said, you know what? Let's take a journey back and let's just start from the beginning.
Wow.
And so then I battled. Do you buy the paperbacks? Do I go out and buy the war chest that is the first 25 books? And I said, where am I going to put these books?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh man, one day maybe I'll have a nice home with a shelf and like you'll see them all. It'll be beautiful and it'll be cool, right? One day. And then I was like, you know what? I'll just start on my Amazon Kindle because on the Kindle app you can buy them.
Yep.
Yeah, they're $5 a pop, which is a little expensive, but like I'm having a great time with them. So I started buying them.
Well, it's expensive when there's like fucking 40 books and stuff. Yeah.
There's 107 books, and I'm on number 13, right?
Jesus.
So I read through them, and I'm having such a great time remembering the moments and reliving some of the moments that I got to do on the show. And I will say, I feel like they're very close. Like I don't see a giant like, oh, this is happening over here and that didn't happen there. This feels beat for beat.
Like a straight up
book
adaptation.
to show that I was watching. So like for me, I was like, oh, nothing new is coming out of this, but like I'm seeing the artwork. I'm reliving those moments of going to Arlong Park and saving Nami, right? Meeting the chef team and getting Sanji, right? Like going back and getting Usopp with the crazy pirate with the cat's nails, right? Like it was fun moments to relive that, and I did really enjoy it. And so it's cool. I've been going deep onto the mangas. And I'm having
so if it's 1-to-1, like how long are those arcs? Because I remember like when I getting to Usopp, that arc feels so long of like the journey on like that island. Usopp kind of lying to this this girl who's like sick, kind of. I forget if she was sick or if she just like stayed in.
Sick.
Yeah, like she just like kind of stayed in her home all the time, and that felt like a very long arc. So like, how many chapters is that in?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that. It feels more like 3 books, maybe 6. So I guess like. You're coming in you buy a book, but it comes with like 3 inside of the book. You know what I mean? And so like it feels like maybe you'll get 2, 3 at most, which would be 9 small paperbacks of going through it, which I think is a pretty good movement here. I'm not feeling like anything's going too long.
Okay.
But you and I, of course, as you know, if you've been on the One Piece journey, I haven't hit Alabasta yet. I haven't hit Skypiea, where it's really going to get meaty, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All of these feel like short, sweet. I'm probably getting 2 books, which is maybe 6 little comic books is what in my mind I would equivalent that to. And it's easy, it's fast.
So you'd say like almost the pacing of the story, at least in the early chapters, feel like go at a faster clip than the show does.
Yes. Yeah. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm watching 30 minutes times 6 or whatever. Like right now it's every night I journal and then I read 1 whole book, which is 3 episodes. So it's like, that takes me about an hour to slowly read and look at all the art. And so, yeah, it's a nice, chill, nighttime thing. Nice. Something I didn't think I would get into because, like, you and I have all those My Hero books, but for some reason I don't want to open them. Or I open one page, I'm like, you know what? Not me. But this, One Piece, you got me.
God, you love One Piece so goddamn much. Have you been watching anything else?
No,
or has it just been the One Piece?
Well, I have been watching One Piece, which I want to save for our One Piece talk.
Yeah.
But I've only watched One Piece. Nothing new, right? Like, I really enjoyed Blue Lock. I want another season of Blue Lock.
Gotcha.
I love Skate the Infinity. Still waiting for season 2 of Skate the Infinity, right? Like, I think I'm more on the train of I'm looking for what I love as opposed to trying something new, which is probably the wrong way to go about it because I'm in this lull, like you and I know, of like, hey, it's time to try Hunter x Hunter. It is time to try Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, like so many recommendations for these top tier animes that I just haven't tried yet.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking into what do we know about season 2. This is from GameRant.com. In a post on August 2022, the Skate the Infinity official Twitter account announced that not only was a second season confirmed, but a new OVA as well, which is original video animation. Which doesn't make sense to me because I'm pretty sure Skate the Infinity is only an anime and not adapted from a manga or anything, so that's interesting.
I would buy that.
The main production team from season 1 will return for both projects. The actual release date for the 2 projects is yet to be confirmed. So a season 2 is being worked on, which is nice to know. I didn't even know if season 2 was even confirmed. So we'll get it one day.
And another fun one, of course, now that we've started kind of anime, I want to give a big shout out to the Crunchyroll team. Crunchyroll has put me on like the press briefings where I'm getting the emails now. And they have a lot of the Dragon Ball movies now available to watch.
Yep.
And I wrote them back and said, hey, I've never watched Dragon Ball in my life. Is there a good place to start? And they were so kind, and they were like recommending a couple for me to try. So like maybe the next time we'll talk about some Dragon Ball and me trying it. But like it was cool. Like now we get the emails and like I'm in kind of the know, quote unquote,
of like what's happening.
This is cool. Like maybe I should check that out.
Hell yeah. Well, when it comes to what I've been watching, not as barren as like kind of your journey outside of the One Piece manga, but still very like I feel like I've definitely slowed down. By the time this episode comes out, it's gonna be weird to say this out loud, but you'll understand why I've been so busy. Last week, Zelda in Review over on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames came out. So I've been a busy boy working on that special presentation and then special presentation number 4, which is coming out later this year. And, trying to rewatch Star Wars Rebels for Ahsoka, which will be taking over screencast feeds in a couple of weeks, which is insane to think about. So I've been really busy. So yeah, like One Piece One Piece, but like also just like anime at my leisure has definitely taken like a back seat. But to follow up, I have been watching the weekly things, the some of the stuff that's been coming out. Demon Slayer season 3 just wrapped up a few weeks back, and by the time we had recorded last episode, I think it had just like started up, I think like the first episode had finally just dropped on Crunchyroll. So that wrapped up. It was like kind of a shorter season. It was just like adapting one arc, which was like 11 episode season. Ooh. Really loved it. I know there's some talks of like, oh, it's not as as to the level of the Entertainment District arc, which I would push back on a little bit. I would agree that this arc, which is the Swordsmith Village arc, isn't as flashy, and that's because the Entertainment District arc, you're going into like just visually, just you're getting a lot even outside of the fights, whereas like the Swordsmith Village isn't like it's hidden in the woods and all this stuff, and there's not a lot of like crazy colors. They're fighting in the forest at night and all this stuff. But I would push back. Like I really loved the animation and the action for this season. They just keep ramping up of just like I don't know how they will top like this fight and then they top it in the next fight, but it was really wonderful to kind of see, because Demon Slayer was one of the few that I think it was after the Entertainment District arc I was like, all right, I just gotta know. Yeah. And that was one where I binged through the manga, so I know what the journey ahead is. Okay. But it was really cool to see like on screen the Love Hashira Mitsuru and the Mist Hashira Muichiro. I'm blanking on how to actually pronounce his name. Tokido. And seeing their journey, seeing like what made them become demon slayers, and how like kind of seeing where they started and like realizing like, man, like they went on that journey to become Hashira, to become like the biggest and the baddest in the Demon Slayer core, which is super cool. And yeah, just like the demons that they had to fight, which were teased at the very beginning of the season. Not all of them were in that arc, but there were 2 that went over to try to infiltrate the Swordsmith Village, and it leads to some absolutely insane fights, which I absolutely love. Like, you think the boy Tanjiro, like, he peaked in last season? No, man. There's a moment in this season that is absolutely insane. Very slight spoilers, where he has to like cut the heads off of like 3 different demons, and he does it in like such a quick succession, and the animation around it is so beautiful. Like, I had Andy watch that clip, right? And he was like, God damn, this is like movie level animation. I'm like, yeah, and they do this every goddamn week. And so yeah, Demon Slayer is killing it. They just officially announced the next arc, which is the Hashira training arc. I won't go into too much detail of what that arc is about, but the Swordsmith Village arc essentially kind of kicked off the second half of Demon Slayer. We're getting into the thick of it now, which is really exciting. I don't think there's any talks of when that season is coming out, which is interesting because Swordsmith Village arc was such a shorter season, and then I imagine the Hashira training arc is also going to be similar in length, in like 10 to 11 episodes. And then the final arc is going to be a beefy boy, which I imagine will be the length of a normal season, like season 1. And so it'll be interesting to see when the next arc comes out in anime adaptation. And I wonder if like because they're working on these in kind of like shorter bursts with Demon Slayer right now. I wonder if they're already ramping up production on the final kind of big arc, just to give themselves time of like, hey, let's kind of work on these going back and forth, just to give as much love to the final kind of act of Demon Slayer as we can. It'll be interesting. I also am just completely talking out of my ass because I don't know how anime production works.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting that, you know, season 3 wasn't packaged as like, all right, here's the first arc, which will be the first half of the season. Here's the second arc. That's the second half of the season, you know? It's interesting. And even season 2 was technically a little weird, right? Where it was Mugen Train was adapted into a movie, but then they like readapted it into the show. So there's actual like Mugen Train episodes that contextualize a little bit more of like why the Flame Hashira was on that train and all that stuff. And then the second half of season 2 was the Entertainment District arc. But it was weird because the Entertainment District arc felt like the only thing that was really new in that season.
Yeah.
So yeah, Demon Slayer's kind of release pattern is definitely a weird one that I'm not used to, and I'm interested to see how they do it moving forward.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that you're interested in the production side of things too, because me and my buddy Kevin A. Sex try to like look at One Piece in general and like see how many episodes there've been, how long it runs, and like trying to break down like episode per week, per year.
Yeah.
How do you work on all of that?
And then you bring in the dubbed, which is like
exactly.
fucking years and years behind and stuff like that, which is like a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
of like,
you'd love to have a production side of conversation.
Yeah.
Like, when did we start? When did we know we were going down this?
Because it's
long?
not like,
how do you balance that?
I don't remember.
Amazing.
I don't know like how much later the dubbed started for One Piece, but I remember like back in the day, like the 4Kids version or whatever that had like the, you know, absolutely fantastic rap song as the intro. And I remember, like, those are the voices, and like those dubbed episodes from back in like 2005 or whatever were the voices that we do hear today.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine they were too far behind on the dub back then. So I wonder, like, what happened throughout the years where it's like it feels so far behind. Because like I remember when episode 1000 came out for One Piece, I think like a year, maybe 2 years ago, because they did like the great callback to the original arc and stuff like that. But I don't think the dubbed is going to get, that version is not going to come out for like maybe another year or two, which is fascinating. Yeah, and then the other thing I've been watching that just started off last week, at least at the time of recording, that's why I'm wearing this shirt right now, is Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, which I think I remember talking about a little bit of Jujutsu Kaisen back in episode 1 of Kinda Anime. And it's exciting to finally be back, because I talked about on that episode of the world not fully being sold on me quite yet, and then when the movie came out to Crunchyroll, that's what really brought me into to actually falling in love with this world and these characters and this story. Then I rewatched season 1 after that, and I like now feel fully prepared to get into season 2. And just the quick premise of it is interesting. We're not following up with directly like the end of season 1. We're going to do a flashback arc with my boy Gojo, who he's not on camera over right now, but on the wall, he's this happy boy with the blindfold. We're going back to see Gojo at Jujutsu High when he was like a kid, no longer the teacher that he is in like the modern day stuff. And yeah, it's about Gojo and his time at Jujutsu High, along with Suguro Geto, which is what we've been introduced as in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, the movie, and then season 1. It seems like he's the main antagonist. So it's interesting to like kind of see of like, oh, he went to Jujutsu High. He was friends with Gojo. They're like two dipshits being like buddy and all that stuff. And I'm so excited to learn like what happened there. Why does he become the antagonist of this world and like, you know, starts using curses to fuck with Jujutsu High and is looking to, you know, essentially like kill Jujutsu sorcerers. I'm a little bit hazy on like what his kind of motivation is in the modern day era, but it's fascinating to be like, oh, you were just a kid and you were actually more of like like an even-headed person than Gojo is like at this time. And it's really fascinating to see they're kind of tasked with this big mission of protecting this girl who's gonna, and knowingly she's essentially going to be sacrificed to help the lifespan of, I believe, the head of Jujutsu High, because he's like hundreds and hundreds of years old, and then once every like 100 years or so, essentially like someone has to like give their life to him so he can so he essentially doesn't explode and kill everything, which is interesting. And it's interesting to learn this girl that they're protecting is in the know of it. She's kind of come to terms with I don't think of it as dying, but I think of it as I will live on in him and he will be me and all this stuff. And I wonder if this story that we're being told, again, we're recording, we're recording 2 days before episode 3 comes out, is this the story that, radicalizes Geto and turns him into this antagonist that we know him from in Jujutsu Kaisen 0 and season 1, and what lessons Gojo takes from that, because he does on the surface Gojo feels the same silly guy that we see up on the wall running around and just being a silly little doofus, but I wonder what in this story will kind of be kind of a turning point for both of them and why they come to a head, and are we only going to get a tease of why Geto is becoming radicalized and wants to burn everything down and all this stuff? It'll be interesting. So I feel that's all I can really say. It's just the first 2 episodes, it feels a little bit more of a setup for what's going to happen here. It felt like the tease for episode 3, some big shit is about to go down, which I'm excited for. So yeah, the last thing I'll say is I noticed this very subtly because, I rewatched the show earlier this year, is that the art style has changed a little bit for season 2. It seems more fine, line work and stuff like that. It still shares the visual language of season 1, but it seems maybe just because Jujutsu Kaisen season 1 blew up and then the movie was great, maybe they have a little bit more of a financial more production value to really hone in on the art style, again, I'm in the middle of this arc right now, right? There's a Avatar: The Last Airbender. I wouldn't consider quite an anime, right? But in Legend of Korra, it has a very distinct art style. But then it's really cool, Mike. You get the kind of flashback story of the very first Avatar, and that had a very different art style. And I wonder if they're trying to do something similar here, where it's because we're going back in time, we're going to try to make this a little bit more of its own style, and then once after this arc we kind of go back to what season 1 felt and looks like, or if this is just, hey, we've got more of a budget now, we want to refine what the visual style is. But I'm digging it so far. It reminds me of a little bit of a cross between the visual style of Demon Slayer season 1 and then almost Chainsaw Man a little bit. So yeah, that's what I've been watching.
That's
Mike.
good stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'll probably talk more about my thoughts on Jujutsu Kaisen season 2 for the next episode, because we're only a couple of episodes in. I don't know how long this season is, but I'm excited to find out. And I'm excited to get into it. Mike, this is an interesting turn for us. We don't have a lot to talk about seasonally, which the first 2 episodes of Kinda Anime were all about hey, let's deep dive into all the big seasonal stuff that's happening right now, sharing our love for My Hero and all that stuff. But we don't have that this time around. And so I thought it'd be fun to introduce for episode 3 of Kinda Anime, topic of the show. This was a topic that, if the winter season wasn't so busy at the very beginning of the year and we didn't have so much to unpack, I would have loved the first episode of Kinda Anime to be about this. But, looking ahead, I was like, you know what? Episode 3 would be a good time for this. I want to talk about what got us into anime, our anime journeys, essentially, of where we started and how that got us here. Because, people know us from, the streaming days, work from home, checking in on anime every once in a while. You more so regularly with Blessing for Anime Thursdays and all that stuff. But I don't know if we've ever talked about, what got us into it. And I think that would be a nice little kind of introduction, a little more of an introduction to our tastes and what got us into all of this. And so, I like that. Yeah, I want to break it down for you.
Yeah, Barrett, what a fun conversation we had, because mine is going to be so different than yours, and I think that's going to be so exciting about this, because mine starts off so different. I think a lot of people know I'm in my early 30s, right? So anime has been around my life for a long, long time, but actually as a young kid, I didn't have cable growing up. So there was no Toonami, right? I remember I would go over to friends' houses or we'd visit the grandparents and I would see the Toonami commercial, right? And I would be like, I don't know what this is.
I need
right?
it, though.
When we were back home, we don't have that. So you would see the hints of Afro Samurai and Gundams, right? And Dragon Ball. And I'd be like, I don't know any of that, right? And like, there were kids that were talking about it in my circles, but nothing that I could ever relate to and understand. And so it took me all this time until about, I think, 2017 or 18 for me to truly try, right? And I think a big credit to that is my friends Kevin A. Sex and the Twitch stream. Like, I think there are so many incredible best friends in our community that are passionate about anime, and just the smallest spark will get everyone excited to share their enthusiasm. And that's what I love about it. And so I opened up. I said, I'm going to try, right? And so in 2017 or 18, I watched like 20 different series. I said, give me your recommendations. I will just start watching them. And there was some that I loved, some that I didn't like, right? And I think everybody, when I talk about One Piece all the time or My Hero, I think you kind of get the gist of like where I want to go with it, right?
So those were were those the standouts then, like at the very beginning?
The very beginning standouts were definitely My Hero, Samurai Champloo, which we'll talk about. I think that was the big moving points. Afro Samurai, because that's just a dope, easy one. And Space Dandy. Oddly enough, I didn't like Cowboy Bebop when I first started, but Space Dandy was the one that got me in. And so I think you kind of get the genres of like what I like and where I want to go. There were some big turnoffs as well, right? I tried a show, I'll never forget, like High School of the Undead or something. And like, I don't know how
you're getting to some of the deep cuts.
Yeah, I don't know how I got recommended that, or if it was just like on the pages as recommendations.
Yeah.
But like, as we've talked about, I think I have a line that I'm willing to like go a little bit past, but like the horniness factor, the over-sexualization really turns me off sometimes. And that show like took a hard turn where I was like, oh, like I'm not really into this, right? And so I remember turning that off and then going to Devilman Crybaby. And I really just did not vibe with that. I don't know if it was the super dark tones to it. I don't know if that got a little too sexual for me, but there was something in Devilman Crybaby when everybody was talking and hyping it up where I was like, I don't like this at all. It is not my cup of tea. And so like there was these weird moments where I just wasn't vibing with certain ones, but I'd get back on the train and all of a sudden I would find shows like Skate the Infinity where it was kind of fun, uplifting, kind of comedy, and like that's where I wanted to plant my flag and be in. And I got some great recommendations. I mean, like I said, I think Samurai Champloo was the one that pushed me over the edge.
Okay.
Dope action, really fun, heartfelt characters that you grew and loved. Awesome, awesome music, right? I think like everyone can go back to that soundtrack and be like, yo, that's a banger of a soundtrack.
I've never watched it, but it's interesting that you mention Cowboy Bebop because I think that's the same creator, and that was like kind of the spiritual like successor because
that's cool.
Cowboy Bebop was only one season. I forget if it was like canceled early, but then there was the movie and stuff like that. But I believe I'll look that up just to make sure I'm correct on myself here since we're not live and there's no you're wrong. But yeah, that's the same creator there.
That's interesting. That's cool. And so yeah, like I said, I tried Cowboy Bebop. And I liked it. I didn't love it. But then I found a lot of love in Space Dandy, which I am 50-50 on Space Dandy. I think there's some really great, fun episodes. And then there's some weird, trippy episodes that they want to get into that I didn't love. But like Space Dandy was just so much fun. And I think that got me back on the train of Cowboy Bebop, which I was into. And so, yeah, I've had this weird journey of, I think it's a lot of the Twitch chat and Kevin A. Sex giving me recommendations, me going off and trying them, not being afraid to like, jump into the Crunchyroll or Funimation app and just click on something, right? And I found things that I love. I found things that I dislike, like Attack on Titan at the beginning. Thought it was way too dark, way too graphic. Then fell in love with it. Once you push back a certain point, it's like, oh, this is like really, really cool. And I like the stories that these guys are telling. And it was something I never thought I would be into anime, but now I sit here with you on episode 3 and I'm reading the books, which is wild to think about. I'm on journeys, like we'll talk about with One Piece, where I'm 300 plus episodes in and I never wanted to stop. And so, yeah, anime really grew on me coming from someone who had out of the know, didn't think anything of it, to just taking a chance really took me to the next level. And I think My Hero, One Piece, Samurai Champloo, and Space Dandy were the 4 that I can look back on and be like, if I didn't have those 4 staples, I probably wouldn't kept watching anime, but I found love in all of them. And that's what got me to Spy Family with You, which now I love and can't get enough of, right? Like, it's such a good time. So, yeah, for me, it was just taking a chance, Bear, because I didn't have cable. There was no Dragon Ball, right? Like, so when we get these press briefings of like, oh, there's 17 Dragon Ball movies coming to Crunchyroll.
Like, I don't know where to start.
I don't even know. Oh, there's 3 different Dragon Balls you can watch. I don't know what that is, sir. Like, okay, so, yeah, for me, it's special. And now I start to see dipping my toe into the anime world, I start to see the cultural relevance of, oh, that's Goku on all these T-shirts. That's why he's so popular. Oh, Andy loves Gundam because Gundam's freaking dope if you give it a try, right? And like those things are awesome. And so I start to see that now. I think a big one now is like Spy Family at the store. You can get a T-shirt of it, right? You can see My Hero characters on
Everywhere.
all these different T-shirts, on notebooks. I'm like, oh man, if I was a kid, I'd be going crazy over this, right? But like now as an adult, I have disposable income. I'll buy that dumb stuff. Or I have a lot of time on my hands. I'll watch that stuff, you know? So for me, it was just taking a chance, trying new things, and also remembering, don't be deterred. If you don't like something, get out of that, go try something new. So I've really loved that. What about you, Barrett?
Well, my last question for you, and I don't know, like this might be too broad of a question, but I'll test it with you. You're talking about everything you love, the journeys of finding what you love, what you don't love. But the encompassing thing that I'm interested by, what about anime is special to you?
It's the heartfelt and moving stories mixed with the cartoony nature. And I know a lot of people will go, oh, you know what I mean? But like for me, growing up as a kid, I loved Saturday morning cartoons. I like cartoons, right? Like I think of the Angry Beavers. I think of Recess. Like I think of Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, the Saturday morning cartoons and Sunday morning cartoons that you would watch. Like those always grab my attention. That's the bright, colorful nature of them. It's the animation that you can see. It's the characters you fall in love with that become icons, right? Like it wasn't Three's Company. It wasn't, you know, Boy Meets World for me. It was, oh, I like cartoons.
Yeah.
And so the idea of, oh, as you grow older, there is this thing called anime, right? And like, yeah, they will cater to a younger audience, but also there are adult themes here. There all are so stories that you're going to fall in love with and want to go on, just like you would on a Dawson's Creek or 90210 Beverly Hills, whatever. Like there are things that I could see in these that I would be interested in. And if I could rewind time, I would never watch the OC. I'd go watch Dragon Ball instead because there was moments where I'm like, man, I don't want to watch this, but I love this. And so, yeah, when you ask that question, it's the bright colors, it's the anime, it's the cartoony nature of it, but it's also the stories because that's what you can get lost in. It's some really great stories.
Yeah, that's something similar, and I'll use this to kind of transition to my own journey, is that, I think there's something super unique about the medium that is able to mix tones in ways that aren't super... I don't know, it just gels together in a way that just, I don't know how it works, but it just works for me. And I don't know, if it's because these like sometimes dark stories are being delivered in like a more of a cartoon form, where it's like, you have Jujutsu Kaisen where one scene, you know, they're blowing off heads of curses and stuff like that. And you see a curse kind of like hold a person in his mouth, but then the next scene you have like chibi versions of Gojo and Geto like being doofuses, and there's just something about that kind of like works in like synchronicity together that just like I don't think can be repeated in kind of any other medium, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so there's something about that, and I think just storytelling from Japan I think gets a little bit. I think it can get a bit more existential, which I find interesting, in diving deep more into the kind of frameworks of using anime as like allegories for modern day things. There's a bigger conversation to be had here, but Full Metal Alchemist, there's a reason why I love that story. Just like, I don't know, it's very interesting, and I feel like there's a very specific style of storytelling in the anime like medium that just like really pulls me in. Very similar to you of all of that.
And another one on that, like I love that the imagination can run wild in animation and anime, right? Like you can draw certain things, you can bring creatures to life that I couldn't do in live action stuff, right? And like CGI sure is making its way there and it's doing some really cool stuff, but back in the day you weren't getting what you could see with someone drawing something so unique, and it's like you get to see into the minds of others where you go, I never would have thought of that in my life. This is crazy that someone in their brain can picture this, make this, and show it to me and go, oh man, like that's a wild one as well.
So to transition over to myself, I've talked about my infamous babysitters from back in the day with like getting me into certain video games at a young age. Final Fantasy 7, 10, Chrono Trigger, and these were the same. Explain it. It's like my dad's ex's siblings who were like really into video games and anime. And like the one anime I remember, or the two anime movies I remember getting into at a very young age, more appropriate for my age at the time, was like 6 years old, was Spirited Away. One of my favorite movies of all time. I remember like that being an early one when I was a little, just like really connecting with that. And it's taken me a very long time of like why that means so much to me emotionally. Obviously, it's one of the first things that got me into the medium, but then also just like, I feel like there's a story there of like it being hard to be a new kid. And as someone who has moved around a lot growing up, like that just like really resonated with me even at a young age. And then the other movie that I was really into, but definitely way too young to be into it, was Akira. Oh. I was watching Akira at like age 6 with the creepy scene where Canada is like or maybe the other one, I'm blanking on it, is in like the creepy bedroom. That's the creepy toys like running around. And I was so into it, and I knew it was like super inappropriate. I also just like kind of loved the almost like maybe not existential dread, but like the dread of like throughout the entire story of like, you know, shit's gonna blow up at the end of it. And when I forget, I'm mixing up Tetsuo and Canada, whoever turns into like the big gross monster at the very end, and it's essentially like blowing up. I fucking loved that shit as a kid. And like, this is also around the time where like I'm watching Terminator 2 at like my mom's friend's house and all that stuff. Like I just really like, those were the things that like really opened me up to like, yo, storytelling can get fucking creepy and fucked up, man. And so like, but it was interesting because after that, anime didn't continue in my life, which is interesting, and it's kind of going to be the pattern for like the rest of the story here, where that was like I was 6 or 7 years old, and then my next memory of what like got me interested into anime was like middle school, and I remember very particularly there was like one night. My mom had friends over, so I was upstairs like watching like whatever like channel she had put in. I think it was Cartoon Network that turned into, I think, Toonami or maybe Adult Swim or whatever. It was late though. It was like 7 or 8 p.m. and they were playing Naruto, and it was the like tournament or it was like the testing arc of like who can make it as a ninja. And I just loved the concept of like there's like the test that they have to do, and the whole point is to cheat without getting caught. And then there's the whole like fighting in the forests and all this stuff. I was just really into that and like that idea. And they played like almost that entire arc, and like it was like a marathon of that arc in one night. And I was really into it. And then never followed up that night. Man. I know, like I was really into it that night, and I thought it was so cool. And then like I never continued really with Naruto. And then I think I think that was actually more like 4th or 5th grade. And I think maybe like a year or two later in middle school, yeah, because we were living at a different place at this point, where, you know, coming home, you know, there's like an hour, maybe 2 before like the parents get home, so I can like either do homework and be responsible or fuck off and just kind of like let my brain rest from the school day. And that was the time, you know, when Toonami was actually playing, and you were getting things like One Piece with the fantastic American version intro with the rap. One Piece was the main thing that stood out. Bobobo, which is the anime that I joke about all the time, which is like, to sell it to y'all, it's like almost, it's what introduced me to like random Deadpool type humor before I even knew who Deadpool was, but in an anime format. And it was super goofy. The guy like fucking fights with his nose hairs or his like mustache. I think it's his nose hairs are really strong, and he fights with them. And that was like really goofy and weird to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm fucking into this. And of course, One Piece, that like I found that at the time where I was like really into Pirates of the Caribbean, loved just pirate stories. And so like you're telling me there's like a cool like anime with pirates that essentially have like superpowers and shit. Like hell yeah. Like I could not tell you what arc that was or whatever. I do remember it was like the full crew before Chopper, because I don't really remember Chopper as a kid. And so there was that little like kind of era of my life, but then fell off again. Like there was no real follow-up. I wasn't following specific arcs of One Piece. I was just catching an episode every once in a while and being like, what weekly adventure are these guys on? You know? If I'm jumping into the middle of an arc, so be it, whatever. And then Bobobo, that was really just like whatever fucking random story was being told. And then the next big point for me was high school when I got into, because of a friend, Full Metal Alchemist, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And on a similar note, like that was coming out around 2010, I think, Brotherhood, which was like the second like kind of go at Bones like actually adapting the manga, because the original anime kind of like got ahead of the manga and then kind of had to make up their own story because the manga wasn't finished. So Brotherhood was like, all right, we're gonna redo Full Metal, kind of like if you know certain things from like the original run and the manga, we might skim past that a little bit, but like we're hitting the major beats and like to actually like fully adapt the story that the manga told. And I fucking adored it and I loved it so much. Seriously, so like some of my favorite, just like binging through all of that was such a treat. But then, yeah, in a similar note, that did not get me into like exploring other anime. You know, I was like really into Full Metal, but then that's also at the same time where I'm a theater kid, so I'm into film, I'm into Breaking Bad, you know, like, you know, I had a little bit of time and love for Full Metal, but outside of that, it didn't really bring me in. And then we jump ahead to like 8-9 years later, 2019, and to bring it back to like, you know, the best friends out there being supportive of getting into anime. That was, you know, my journey in 2019, my first year here at KindaFunny, where for years people have been talking about My Hero. Oh, it's superheroes in anime, and it's such a like a cool like kind of like Eastern kind of look at like what traditional like Western like superheroes are doing and trying to contextualize it in the world. It's so fucking hype and all this stuff. And for years they're talking about this, and I'm just like, it's all just going over my head, whatever. Like, anime's cool, but you know, that was past me, you know, for little bits here and there. And then there was one day, I remember the day where Alyssa was out of town, so it was just like me at home for the weekend. And then there was like a game I was playing, like trying to play through, but I was having lunch, and you know, I don't want to like eat and hold my controller, so I was like, let me just put something on real quick. And I remember, shout out to my friends Ari and Nabishin, who I'd seen like that earlier that day, like going back and forth on Twitter about My Hero. And I was like, you know what? It's on Hulu. Let me give it a shot. And I binged through that entire first season in one sitting. I didn't even pick up the game that I was probably playing through to talk about on some piece of content or whatever. I just watched My Hero. And then, you know, the rest is history there, you know, like slowly getting back into things, you know, also finding Skate the Infinity with you, getting into Demon Slayer, getting into Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, that's pretty much the story there. And so, you know, I remember for episode 1 of kind of anime, you were like, oh, I'm the green kid, and you're like more seasoned. And it's like, yeah, but not really. Like, I was getting into things at very specific times in my life, but it wasn't really until like essentially even 2020, because 2019 it almost became the thing of like, all right, it's only My Hero and like nothing else really matters. But then 2020, it was just like, all right, like actually I want to give more things a shot. Mm-hmm. So that's why I would consider us both still like green and all that stuff. So that's an
incredible journey.
Thank you.
I love that, Barrett. It's so much fun to hear everyone's journey and enthusiasm, what they have attached themselves to. Mm-hmm. What was some of the key milestones and moments, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's crazy to think back on the moments that you watch Full Metal Brotherhood and you're like, oh man, this is where I was, or that I didn't watch anything else. I remember growing up, it was Pokemon, of course, right? Like, you bring up Pokemon, it's like every
and then shout out to Digimon,
Pokemon.
The movie.
Digimon came out. Like, for me, when I woke up before elementary school, I would turn on the television. It would go Pokemon into Sailor Moon into X-Men. And I never thought, when I look back at myself and go, man, there's a 7-year-old boy there just watching Sailor Moon, because all he wanted to do was just watch cartoons and not go catch the bus. I would watch Pokemon and the Sailor Moon, and then every day, I'll never forget, the bus would show up at the 15 marker, and X-Men would come on, and they'd hit you with that sick riff, and I'd have to walk out the door all upset because I watched 30 minutes of Sailor Moon, and I couldn't watch X-Men. But yeah, it's just wild, like the moments in your life where I look back and I go, man, like, I was watching a little bit of that, or that influenced me into where I am now, of like, I remember that, right? And so, yeah, it's really cool to hear people's stories and see what they attach themselves to and what they like, you know?
But that's just our stories, Mike.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's just what got us into anime, but there are so many different stories out there about how people got into the medium, so I thought it would be a fun idea to bring in a bunch of special guests to tell their stories. There are a few people that hit us up when Kinda Anime was announced of like, oh, I would love to be a guest on the show. And so there were so many people that I had in my head of, oh, I would love to have this person on this show. We only have 4 episodes. I don't know if I'm trying to get like multiple guests for each episode. I want to try to build like a little bit towards like guests and all that stuff. So I thought it'd be a good idea for this topic of what got us into anime to bring in some guests to kind of introduce y'all to some voices you've probably heard and met before, but maybe some new voices that you may not know, just because, Mike and I aren't always here. This show comes out once every few months. The next episode's the final episode of Kinda Anime, so I thought it'd be a cool idea to introduce some other voices to maybe follow regularly outside of Kinda Anime. So that's what we're here to do for the rest of this show here. So we always say round robin, but that's never correct. We're going to be bringing in guest after guest for Kinda Anime to, find out about some other people, what their favorite anime is, what got them into anime, and all of that great stuff. So let me introduce you to our first guest here, and just as a quick little thing here, after all the guests come through, we will close out with some One Piece and some other things there. But let me take you to our first guest.
Hey everybody, welcome into a fun segment here on episode 3 of Kinda Anime. Of course, before you got to know a little bit more about me and Barrett and what got us into anime, what are some of our favorite animes. But you know what? We thought, let's invite some really cool guests on, Barrett. And for this episode, we're going to highlight awesome voices from around the industry, people that are our friends, family, people we know that are just really rad and cool. And we thought, let's get to know them. So, of course, our first guest to kick this off is Michael Higham from GameSpot. But Michael, you're so much more than that. If people don't know who you are, who are you and what do you do?
Well, Michael Higham, I work at GameSpot, but I'm out here. I've been, before GameSpot, I was actually a political consultant. So
wow.
I've had a very big
I didn't
career
know
change.
that. Yeah.
I studied political science in college, and then I've gotten to like running campaigns, also political journalism and all that. And then I ended up in the games industry. So I'm having a lot more fun. The times were dire back then. I mean, but not as much as they are now. So I'm kind of glad I'm out of the game, but I'm not completely out of the game.
Okay.
I'm still, on activism is a big part of how I stay in touch with that side of my life. But outside of that, what I'm saying, I do my thing out here in the industry.
That's awesome. I'd like to, I need to ride with you more, man. I need you to awaken that side of me and help me get out there.
Sure, hey, I got you. I got
you. For good, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, well, here's the deal. We're all about fun here on Kinda Anime. And of course, you brought up the fun. You've been doing a lot of fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And of course, anime is fun to us. And I know it is to you. What got you into anime? Let's start off there. Let's start off with step 1. What got you in?
Get real cozy, boys, because we're about to talk about my journey through anime. I think I'll try to make it brief, but it kind of happened in 3 steps, I guess you could say. So growing up, I played a lot of Japanese games. And at the time, I didn't really make the connection of like, oh, I'm playing a Japanese RPG or I'm watching an anime. It's more like, these are games, these are cartoons.
Yep.
So like I watched a lot of the Pokemon anime. I watched a lot of Dragon Ball because everyone watched Dragon Ball. You wake up on Saturday morning, Dragon Ball's on, you watch it, you get hyped, right? So it was just kind of always in the periphery, but I never like fully embraced it as like a cultural thing. But along the way, it opened my eyes to all sorts of stories, different types of stories for different types of characters. Sailor Moon was huge.
Oh yeah,
growing up, and for me, it was difficult because every time there was the transformation, so I'd be like, "Yo, mom, I'm not watching hentai. I'm not watching hentai."
No,
now just straight, hentai's kind of
you can't say that anymore.
Hentai hit different, so but now I understand.
No shame here. No shame here.
But back in the day, I was like, oh, no one wants. But I love Sailor Moon growing up. But I kind of, as you grow up, tastes change. Mm-hmm. And I just got into different types of mediums, got into different types of games. So that part of me kind of fell by the wayside. And I didn't really know. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not in love with anime anymore. It was just kind of like, I get into different things. Then I circle back on it when in college, like late high school, early college, when I got into Naruto big time. Naruto had already been out for a while, but I started reading the manga, watching the episodes, and I got really deep back into anime. And manga specifically. So I dipped my toes in there specifically for Naruto. But then again, tastes change, and I kind of just it didn't fully embrace it. So it wasn't until 2017 when I played Persona 5.
Oh,
and
shit.
yeah, it's really wild that Persona 5 kind of unlocked a lot of different avenues in my life. And I kind of fell back in love with Japanese games, with RPGs. I kind of started to understand myself better, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of examining my own personal relationships. And along with that is seeking out the types of stories that Persona 5 gave me. And that drove me back into anime big time. So I kind of revisited a lot of stuff that I had watched before, stuff that I had missed along the way, and then the new stuff that was popping off at the time. So I got really into, My Hero was huge when I first started getting back into anime, but I was rewatching a lot of stuff from the old days. Trigun was huge, Evangelion was huge for me, and yeah, I just started just really getting in touch with that side.
So jumping off of there, where? Because I was in a similar place. It's funny that you and I have very similar stories that I told earlier on, where I had like kind of different moments in my life where I almost like got in, right? Yeah, growing up with Digimon, Pokemon and stuff, and then high school there was like Full Metal a little bit, but then went on to other things, and it was similar of like My Hero getting me in, and like Persona 5 coming out that unlocks a little bit of that, like like there's such a big wide thing here with great stories to open you up to. And it wasn't until a couple years after Persona 5 where I really started to like actually get into anime. So I'm wondering if like Persona 5 overall being about kids looking to fight against essentially systemic injustice, and finding themselves in that and how to navigate through that while also being a coming of age story. Like what was the first step into anime from that, where you're trying to look for something that hits similarly?
Well, I looked to, first off, I went to older Persona games. So that's when I got into 4, 3, Shin Megami Tensei, and started to get, like, I always loved Final Fantasy as a kid.
Right.
Pivotal games like Chrono Trigger we were talking about earlier. And so I went back into the old RPGs I had missed along the way, similar to how I looked back at some of the old anime I had got into. But I think there's a lot of different things. I watched, Steins Gate, which is a very different thing. Devil is a part-timer. So just kind of bits and pieces here. But I think Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood was a huge part of that too. So I had known about FMA in the periphery, but never really got into it. But I think in my resurgence, my 2017, my revival, FMA Brotherhood was a huge part of that.
Okay.
So I think that was crucial. And then watching a lot of old stuff like Death Note was really wild to rewatch. Like Death Note was huge amongst like the goths growing up, and I was kind of
You're not wrong. Like that shit took over Hot Topic for like a year.
Oh my god, because I was kind of in those groups as a punk kid. I was like goth adjacent, so I always kind of fuck with Death Note from afar. I'm like, hey, I rock with y'all, and then rewatching like, yo, this is like some you got your third eye open on like some big brain type shit. But it's the variety of stories that I think really drew me in and kept me like seeking out a lot of those things. A lot of Trigger stuff. So Kill la Kill, Gurren Lagann. That's not Trigger, but it's Gainax, Trigger, similar lineage, I suppose. But a lot of Trigger joints were huge for me as well. So just kind of, I had a buffet of anime at the time, and it was kind of asking folks like Callie Plaguey, who was pivotal in my anime renewal in my life. She had a lot of recommendations for what to watch, and I think that she played a pivotal role in showcasing the variety that was out there. So, and then as I kept up with anime as they come out one by one, I keep up with like seasons, what's coming out in spring, summer. So now it's become, since 2017, it's such a natural part of my life. Like same
part
way
of the weekly stuff.
Same way like sports is, the same way video game releases are. So same way people get into TV shows and keep up with movies. Anime is just now a part of the regular rotation. Like same thing with like music. So it's just now a part of my life, and so I'm paying attention to what's coming out every season and trying to keep up with what interests me the most.
I like all that a lot. The one I get keeps coming back to is the games, which is really interesting to me, Michael, right? Like certain games kind of brought you into anime and also like
Yeah.
makes you remind you of anime. And of course, you bring up Persona with Barrett, and I know how much he loves that.
Yeah.
What are some other games that maybe give you that itch? Because I always make the joke. South Park, the World of Warcraft episode. I could watch that, and it awakens me of like, give him my $15, play South Park, play World of Warcraft for hours on end. Are there games that like make you have that feeling of like, oh, this is an anime, this is the story that I love, or this makes me want to go watch whatever series it may be?
Yeah, I mean, the RPGs, the Japanese RPGs, kind of hit similar notes, and I think it has to do with the style of storytelling that we get out of Japanese media, where they wear their emotions on their sleeves, and they really put that forth in the writing and in the storytelling style. So I think Final Fantasy XIV was huge. I mean, it's my favorite game of all time, alongside Persona 5 Royal. But it hits similar notes where it's about relationships, the power of friendship. You know what I'm saying? I love the way those themes are woven into the stories that they tell in a lot of these games. Whether it's there's a lot of emotionality. A lot of emotion that is put in, like, they wear it on their sleeve, like I said, and that comes through in the storytelling. And I think it's that human connection that's laid bare in those stories and the things that they're fighting against. So there's not as much subtlety, I guess, in that storytelling, but I think that's what makes it human. That's what connects it to me, because I always have been like a sentimental person, and you get a lot of sentimentality in these styles of stories. So that's the connection for me. And I know a lot of folks kind of maybe step away from RPGs or anime and be like, oh, characters are so exaggerated and they're like over the top, whatever. But that's the thing that I want, and that's what pulls me in. And I talked a lot about that in contrast to when we talked about Final Fantasy 16, about how they're doing a Western style of story.
Right.
But I think as you get deeper into that game, I started to see the seeds of like, oh, this is what I wanted out of Final Fantasy. And it's that style of storytelling where characters are very emotional. And that's kind of dictates their journey, and just how the human bonds are the source of strength. But yeah, that's not, I mean, anime is obviously multifaceted. That's not the only thing. But I think like the Final Fantasies,
totally.
Even like the dark shit like Shin Megami Tensei, the series proper stuff, still plays into like whether it's the art style, the characteristics, the personality of their worlds. All those things feed into what I seek out of anime and in my video games.
Before I let Bear take over here, really quick on the game side of things, what is the best anime that was turned into a game? And is there one JRPG or game that you wish was an anime, right? As me, someone who loves One Piece, right? I have One Piece World Seeker. I got One Piece Odyssey, and I want to play those. I'm a little hesitant because I don't want to be spoiled on the story, but that's hard to say.
Especially that's like a big thing for Odyssey. Is like, you need to watch up to this episode.
What is that one where it's like, oh, they crushed that, turning it into a video game, right?
Damn, that's. I wish y'all pressed me on this. That's hard because
this is on the cuff question. Mike's coming up with them on the spot,
dude,
man.
I'm getting blasted right now. Now it's tough because you see a lot of anime games get adapted, and it's usually like arena fighters. And
of course.
I fuck with like the Ultimate Ninja Storms back in the day with my homies, and I think those really channeled the energy of what it's like to watch a Naruto episode and play it on screen. So I think those games, I mean, I feel like they've gotten stale over the years, of course, but I think they've captured the vibe of a lot of the action of those. But damn, that's crazy, man. What are some ones that's like?
I mean, they got that new My Hero Battle Royale coming out eventually. That I want to get all up in that, because you bring up like the arena fighters. I know they tried with My Hero, and it was like mixed reception. Dragon Ball Fighters with the Z, right? People love that. That was
Dragon Ball Fighters. That's the easy one.
That was a big
easy one.
That was a big hype one, right? And then there was that recent one, Dragon Ball Kakarot, right? Like that one just came out, and like people liked that of what it was. So like, I see them, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like you're taking the animes that people know and love, making them game form, because we're all gamers here at this table. I love that, right? I like seeing movies become a video game or video games becoming a movie. I love that balance between the two.
Oh man, if I want to get deep into it, maybe some of the Evangelion VNs out there. No, those are a whole different world out there.
And that's interesting too, because we talked about this while we recorded earlier. Was like I find one of the reasons that makes anime so special to me is just I feel like there's something in the medium that's hard to adapt to other things. And I do think video games hit that a little bit as well. And there's like an interesting inverse in that as well, where like, there's the Persona 5 animation.
Yeah,
but like,
which is not great.
It's not great. And like, the Persona 4 animation, which is like silly and goofy, but like an adaptation of like 100 or 80 to 100 hour JRPG is like, that's a huge task, and there's a lot that's going to get lost in the shuffle there. And I think on the inverse, there's something similar. So I think the best that you can really get is asking for something like Dragon Ball Fighters, right?
Or like a Muso style action game is
okay.
Yeah, because
that would be wicked. Yeah, totally. Get some of those going. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I you brought up Death Note, that kind of being like a moment of like third eye opening. What were some of the other highlights, right?
Sure.
Where you're having your anime like revival in 2017, Death Note, kind of seeing like what that meant to a lot of people you grew up with. Do you have any other similar moments, like getting into that revival of like, holy shit, like you will never forget the moment you like finished this anime or started this one?
Yeah. I think so. I guess we talk about Evangelion, which is my favorite anime, because that I think when I saw it like back when I was a kid, it was like, oh, cool robots. Mm-hmm. And that's as much as I could understand as a kid. I'm like, oh, I know Ava because the purple and green, Ava unit,
iconic.
1. Yeah,
anyone
like
can
Ava
see
unit
that.
0. It's like, okay, I know Rey, I know these characters. Rewatching that as an adult, it's a completely different context, because not only did I have a better understanding of its place, like Ava's place in the cultural context and what it has meant for anime, and like Anno's place as a creator, but connecting with the human element of that story and how depressing it is, and the examination of a kid growing up being pressured by his parents, living in a post-apocalyptic world, put under tremendous pressure, and like the horrors of being a tool of that world it was really wild in a way that was shocking. So Ava's my favorite anime. It's hard to say that I enjoyed it, because that's not necessarily what you go into it for.
Right.
I'm affected. I was affected by it, I think, is the important
Similar to me the other day, Mike, with Oppenheimer. I did not enjoy that movie, but I was greatly affected by that movie.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing out of people walking out of that movie, and that's interesting you bring it up with that anime, right? Like, not all animes or not all content is supposed to just make you smile and laugh or walk away in love. It's supposed to make you think and say, oh man, that's something. And I like those powerful ones, right? That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, and so for Ava too, I think the fourth wall breaking that it has with the creator and his relationship with the fans, how that shows through in End of Evangelion, the movie back in, I think it was 97, and then the Rebuild series with the 4-part movies that kind of retold that story and then brought it into like a different timeline in a way. So when I look at the totality of Evangelion, it's kind of this really overwhelming thing to kind of wrap my head around, but it's like I love it so much for what it stands for and what it did for anime in general, but also what those individual stories for those characters mean to me. And I think it's such a unique and special thing that if you haven't like watched Evangelion, I think a lot of people deride which way should you watch it, whatever, watch order. I'm just like, watch the 26 episode original series, then watch the Rebuild movies, also watch it all in the way like it was kind of intended, I guess, because there's value in all that. A lot of people say like, oh, the last 2 episodes of the TV series were bad because they ran out of money and had to like cut corners and didn't really tell the full story. But I think there's value in the story in the way that particular branch of the Ava storyline ended, and it was even those affected me in very like weird ways where it's very introspective, where like Shinji is going through a lot and things don't get resolved. And I think that's one of the messages of Ava is like, things don't always get resolved. And then you get in the movies and it's like, okay, well, here's what a full resolution would look like. So it's very complex. It's I still think about it a lot to this day, but Evangelion is very, very special.
That's awesome to hear. You talked about your favorite anime of all time. Do you have a favorite anime movie, and why or why not is it the Digimon movie?
Digimon movie. I mean, I guess if you count the first Pokemon movie, I cried in the theater.
Come on.
Cried in the theater.
Who didn't?
Oh my god! I actually just watched the new Psychopaths movie in theaters. There's one other person in the theater, and it's so niche.
awesome.
Like Psychopaths isn't like huge.
Yeah.
It's pretty well known, but this is a story that like a movie that is particularly meant to bridge like season 2 and season 3. So it's as niche as you could possibly get, and they put it in the theaters. And there's like 2 people in all of Daly City who watch it in theaters, and I'm one of them.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. I think like I said, the rebuild series for Ava is
Right.
really important, and I think that's one of the best ways to engage with Ava in general. End of Evangelion is very hard to kind of recommend just because of how dark and fucked up that is. That thing is.
We shared dinner like over winter break, I think, last year, and you told me about one of the first scenes from that.
Oh my god!
And,
you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah. That was a weird one to be described, and I won't repeat it on the show.
Yeah. So it's things like that that make it a little bit harder to watch. But I think that the Persona 3 movies are actually really, really good.
Really?
I think, yeah. It's been a while since I watched them back in 2017. I haven't really reflected on them, but I think that movie series is better than like the P4 anime and the P5 anime.
Okay.
So I think the P3 movies are actually pretty good and worth seeking out. But yeah, I would probably say was it 3.33 plus 1? I forgot what it was called, but the 4th in the rebuild series for Ava. But one thing I do like about anime movies is if you go to the theater to watch them, even if they're not that great, if they're just okay, the hype of seeing an anime in the movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
I think the first My Hero movie. It was, I forgot what it was called, but the first movie that they made, I watched it in theaters, and to see like all that crew get together, get hype.
Yeah.
In the theater, I'm like, the story is kind of whatever. It's just a side story.
Yeah, I remember we went to go see the second one where it's them on the island, and it ends with like the fight with Midoriya and Bakugo at the end taking on this one dude, and like slight spoilers for the second My Hero movie that came out like 5 years ago, but like the like kind of passing on One for All to Bakugo, so Bakugo can also get One for All was insane. Makes absolutely no sense for the main plot or anything, and they like immediately walk it back. But like that fight sequence, there's something special about it, man.
You're just like getting hyped with everyone. Everyone was like, "Yo!"
Yeah.
Everyone was getting hyped, so it's a different vibe.
It's like going to video game conventions in our world where you're like, oh, I'm not alone. It's a much bigger community, right? And like going to the anime movies are so special because I look around and go, man, there's 100 people here that are all here for the same thing to celebrate their passion. Like, it's dope.
Yeah,
I
we
love
saw like
that sense,
it wasn't even like a proper movie, but the Demon Slayer season 3 like premiere in like theaters, like that was like a more packed theater than I've ever seen in like any of the other movies.
And like you're like, oh man, look at all these people in my community that are interested in this. Like, this is cool as can be.
You look around and like, I know what kind of people you are. I know who you are.
Yeah.
You're fucking weebs like me.
Yeah,
Michael, it's been a fucking delight to have you on for kind of anime. To close out, I want to ask, what is one anime you don't see enough people talk about?
Oh.
So maybe people out there can go educate themselves, go watch it, and talk about it.
I did want to bring up. Well, I think Mob Psycho has gotten its love. I know we're big Mob fans. I love. It's my second favorite anime. I would love to see more folks kind of give it a chance. I think it is really, really.
It does
special.
feel like it gets overshadowed by One Punch. Because it's the same creator and all that, but
I think it would probably either be the original Trigun.
Okay.
I think the original Trigun kind of gets lost in the conversations about Cowboy Bebop because they're very different stories, but there's a similar vibe. But Trigun, the original one in '98, is very, very special. I would hope people would check that out. And I think another one that's underrated that is similar to Evangelion is Madoka Magica. That's also my top 5. So if you want to be, Trigun is kind of depressing too, but there's a little bit more goofiness. There's a little bit more humor in the Trigun world. But Madoka Magica, if you want some existentialism and some dark, depressing shit, Madoka Magica is right there for y'all.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Higham, where can people find you if they want to catch up or keep up with you and all of your thoughts about anime and all that stuff?
You could follow me and all of my bullshit at Michael P. Higham on Twitter or Instagram at Higham Michael. That's just my name. And you can check me out on GameSpot.com with all of our good friends over at that website talking about video games.
Well, thank you so much, Higham, for joining us. Let's kick it over to our next guest. Welcome our next guest, Lisa Wallen. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I am good. I am recovering from San Diego Comic-Con So not doing anything but this today.
Hell yeah, just taking it chill, taking a chill step at a time. Because yeah, I can only imagine after Comic-Con, you're probably a little pooped.
Yeah, I'm very pooped. But it was a really fun weekend. Did a lot of nerdy things. Got to see a lot of nerdy things. But it's con season. It's just
Back
it's
to back
like
to back.
one
Yeah.
weekend you're like, I get to recover, and then 2 weeks later there's something else, and you're like, fun.
Well,
Just dodging COVID every 2 weeks is really great.
yeah. And then there's an added layer on top of that for you, not just cons, but another side of your life or your career that you're doing as well. So I guess to segue into this, for people watching or listening who may not know you, Lisa, who are you and what do you do?
Who is your daddy and what does he do? I just say that. I'm Lisa Wallen or Weesa Lawlen or Weasel Allen, whatever you want to call my Instagram and Twitter handles or whatever. I'm a stand-up comedian, but I also stream on Twitch and I work in esports, so the trifecta of predatory industries. I started doing comedy like 9 years ago. I started Twitch streaming about 3 years ago. Big anime and gaming nerd. That's why people watch my stuff. I play a lot of goofy Japanese solo games, and then I also write content for esports. So I'm just always busy.
Yeah, you're in the same weekend. You're going to Comic-Con. You're on IGN, but then you're also doing stand-up nights. You're like, I always see you like sharing on social like, yo, here's my schedule this week, and it's like, if it's not a night where you're streaming, it's a night where you're going out and doing stand-up comedy. You're a busy one. So how is that balance of like trying to like schedule out things of like, okay, you really want to, all right, like let's say you're deep into a Sekiro playthrough or something, right? And you're like, damn, I just really want to play Sekiro. Do you have to like take time where you're like, okay, I don't, like, even though there might be an opportunity for stand-up this night, do you try to like carve out more time for the streaming stuff, or is it like what takes priority there?
It's been so sporadic because I just moved from Seattle to Los Angeles. So it's like before I was just very comfortable where I was at. I was like, I'm just going to stream my 3 or 4 days, do comedy at night. But now I'm like in a brand new area and it's like my comedy, everything has 180'd on me. So I'm doing mostly comedy, but I'm also slowly getting back into streaming 3 days a week and then doing comedy at night. But it's been a struggle for like 2 years since the pandemic kind of died off. But you know what? It's like my community is amazing. They're very supportive of me being like, I'm going to do comedy and go to comedy shows. And then like, when you've been doing comedy as long as I have, it's like, I don't need to grind and go to open mics every single night. Like I can just message people and be like, hey, I'm going to come to your show. Could I be booked on the future? And it's just a lot because LA like definitely made me like fall in love with comedy again. And it's just crazy. But I haven't had so much time to play anything off stream. So when people are like, are you playing Zelda? I was like, no, I had to quit.
I quit Zelda.
Until it's unbearably too hot to go outside and I'll have time to like sit around and play it.
That's I can only imagine just like, especially being in LA now where I can only imagine the scene is even greater than like a lot of other comedy scene pockets in other cities. So, but you're enjoying it, I hope, and you're having a fun time out there.
Yeah, LA's interesting because it's like you don't really make a lot of money doing comedy because there's so many comedians and it's very showcase based. Like you're not going to get 30, 40-minute long sets. You get like 5 to 10-minute sets, which is good for me right now because I'm so busy. But the catch is like, we don't really pay you, but there's going to be a celebrity on your show. Like that's, and then I meet them for 5 minutes. They forget about who I am entirely. And I'm like, exposure.
Woo! Working for exposure. Yeah. You got to love it. So, I've seen a couple of your clips where, sometimes you're integrating in some of the nerdy parts of your life. One of those things being anime that you'll talk about from time to time. And that's something that I learned. A friend had shouted you out on a stream of mine years ago and had me find you. And you're very passionate about anime and video games. And so just a little bit, with all all the pictures behind you. I recognize the Dark Souls one behind you because I know that my roommate has that in his
And the
bathroom.
pictures on my body.
Oh yeah, just casual Reagan on your hand, no big deal. And so the question I've been asking everybody, just to get the audience to know you a little bit, what is your favorite anime and why?
My absolute favorite anime of all time. It's hard because there's like 4 of them, but if I had to like just choose one that I'm like, this was life changing for me and I'll never get tired of it, is probably Gintama, which is super huge in Japan. It's not so much here unless you live on Twitter and you're in a bubble. Like everyone on Twitter's like, Gintama's so overrated. I'm like, you have never left the house. Nobody knows what Gintama is outside of Twitter. But it's just like everything in anime you love condensed into the one story. All the characters are lovable. I would say for an anime that started in like in early 2000s or a manga, I would say it has the least problematic things in it, which is very important. But it's just it resonates with me on an emotional level, and it's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen in my life. So it's a hard recommendation though, because it's a commitment, and a lot of people want like really actiony stuff. They don't really care about build up and like character development as much. And there's like 40 characters in the show. So it's not one I'm like, everyone go watch it. But if you genuinely stick with it, I think 99% of people who've watched it fell in love with it.
Hell yeah. And so that's one that comes out in the, I see here, I think is 2006, kind of in the middle of that like boom when, tsunami's taking over here in America and all this stuff. You have Naruto being dubbed over here and all that. Was Gintama one that was like early on for you, or is that something that you found like eventually just like diving into the world of anime?
Late bloomer. I think most Western Gintama fans didn't get into it until a few years ago because it was not dubbed. They only dubbed like 60 episodes of it.
Okay.
Because it's very heavily referenced in Japanese culture, so it's really hard to like localize that. But no, I started watching it in like 2016, then took a break, and then I like caught up in 2018, and it was like life changing for me. And I was like, I was sleeping on the series, but also I have this thing now for someone who has, and you probably get this, for someone who dedicates a lot of time and hours into like a series or a TV show or a video game. Sometimes you just want to wait until it's done to make sure it ends well.
Yeah.
So I waited until the manga was done, I think in 2018, 19, and everyone's like, it had one of the greatest endings of any shonen of all time. And I was like, all right, fine. I will dedicate my time to it, because I was like, if I know it's going to end well, then I will not be upset. And so I'm glad I waited, and now it's like I have this empty hole in my heart because it's done. And they're bringing back like a side, like almost like a side series, like a slice of life series based on a gag that they have. So I'm really excited about that, and because I'm like, this is one anime you could make millions of different things out of, and I would never get tired of it.
Hell yeah! So for you, you wouldn't recommend it to a lot of people. Just what's the barrier of entry? Just how many episodes there are to
Just it's a slow burn. I mean, mainly because the directional wise, I think the first 50 or something episodes was done by a different anime director. It definitely deep dives straight into comedy, episodic stuff where it's like there's a different character in every episode. And I think, especially for a lot of newer anime fans, it's definitely a series meant for people over 30, in my opinion, because there's this instant gratification people want in anime where it's like Demon Slayer, where it's like, oh, I just want to see like fights after fights after fights. And JJK, it's like big action stuff. And it's like, they don't really get into that until about 80 episodes in. And then it starts developing like this really long story that has a major payoff around episode 300. So it is, even though it's not as long as something like One Piece or Naruto, it definitely feels like more of a commitment because of the way it's like styled and the way it's written. But to me, I'm like, it's so worth it. Like, people, if whoever's listening really wants to dedicate time to it, I can promise you.
I know we have One Piece fans like in our audience. I watch One Piece. My co-host watch One Piece, and like if y'all can make the dedication for that, I think Gintama could be an easy one for sure.
It's so and what's funny too is a lot of people like me watch the first 30 episodes. I'm like, this isn't going anywhere. I don't really like it. And then you get back into it later on when people like force you to. And then once you watch it, you go back and you rewatch those episodes. You're like, God damn it, I love this series so much because you've already fallen in love with the characters and you just want to see them be goofy.
Yeah, I love that, and you're making me want to start it up because I do love the goofier side. I always shout out Boba Bo Boba Boba Bo. Obviously, what is it? Mob Psycho can definitely get a bit on the goofier side, and so yeah, you're making me kind of want to just like sit down and learn about some people and have a few laughs.
It's also one of those things where once it gets really serious, the serious parts of it is really good. It's kind of like I'm just going to keep talking about this. I hope you know that. It's like a reverse shonen. It's like you have Naruto where it's like you build up to like a giant war. He becomes the Hokage, spoiler alert. Yeah, right. God forbid I spoil something that ended like 10 years ago. But then you have Gintama where it's like it's already post all that. It's like, what if Naruto lost the war and now he's just like a dude in his late 20s, early 30s with PTSD and a sugar addiction. And so as an older person, like you're like, oh shit. Like
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And then it unravels what happens in his past. And that's just like such great storytelling because you're constantly just wanting to know how this character became to be versus where is this character going. And that to me is just such interesting storytelling.
Hell yeah. So we're talking about a little bit of your journey with Gintama, how you got into it, dropped out a little bit, then your friends forced you back into it. So I want to kind of pull back a little bit and talk about your journey into anime as a whole, just because I find it so fascinating. This medium is so large, and I feel like there's so many different backgrounds for people who are into it of how they got into it. So where did this all start for you for finding your love of anime?
When I was a child, when I was a wee lad, it started off with Pokemon Card Captors, which is now Card Captor Sakura, but I was watching like 4Kids anime where everything was like super censored. We used to go rent VHSs of Ramna and Sailor Moon so I could watch that. But then there was like a gap between probably 2000 and like 2013 where I watched no anime because it just did not become accessible at that point. It was too expensive to rent. Like my parents did not have money. We did not have good internet. So it was hard for me to like download things and watch YouTube videos. Like I had to go to my friend's house. And so I kind of just fell off. And then when things started becoming more accessible, it's actually really funny. My dad is the one to blame for me to get back into anime. Like it was 2013 and Attack on Titan had just started. And my dad's really into like big monsters, like sci-fi horror stuff. He's not a big anime fan, but he was like, oh, your sister and I started watching this show, Attack on Titan or whatever. I think you'd really like it. And I was like, God, I haven't watched anime in years. And then I started watching it and I was like, all right, Dad, well, now you just got me back into the shit. And so I think I've been a seasonal watcher literally since 2014, like every season. So, and that was almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
Which is a lot of anime.
That's so funny. Of like, it's rare that I hear like the parent getting the kid into anime, because you know I've had conversations where like I got my dad into My Hero and stuff, and like other conversations where it's like, oh, like you know, like our generation roughly is like, you know, we find a lot of stuff where we're like, oh, like maybe our parents would really like this. So it's rare for me that I hear the inverse, which is really fucking cool. And so from that then, so you're getting to Attack on Titan around 2013, 2014. You mentioned you're becoming a seasonal watcher. What was the next step for you from there? Are you, was it just like all the big shonen that you're getting into? Yeah. Like what was the step after that?
That was about the time where I started catching up on Naruto. Because I started watching Naruto in high school with people. And then since I didn't have, like, I would just go over and watch random episodes. And I was like, all right, I want to get back into this. What do I get into? And then I started catching up on things like Death Note and like Gurren Lagann and like basically every big anime from like 2000 to 2010. I tried to get into Bleach. I wasn't into it. Naruto was definitely like my big three, in quote. Watched Evangelion, and it was just like once I got all the big ones, Full Metal Alchemist, you know, anything that's like highly rated online somewhere was like, okay, I'm gonna deep dive into this. And then once I started catching up on that, then I just started watching what was ever like seasonal on Crunchyroll, you know. And so then I would just like go through what was playing and be like, okay, I'm gonna watch 3 anime this season. I'm gonna watch 7 anime this season, 6 anime this season. And it's literally been like that every year up until now.
So was that did it feel like a lot when you refer like you kind of accept that you're going back into the rabbit hole there, trying to decide of like what you're watching seasonally? Was it just overwhelming to kind of like figure out like what you're picking and choosing from there? Because I can only imagine, like, granted, I have the more modern sense of it where, you know, the kids out there won't know of, like, there was a time where streaming wasn't really a thing, or it was very early streaming where it was just Netflix, and the biggest thing Netflix has was that 70s show. And so, yeah, like, what was your deciding factor into picking and choosing there?
Well, that was, I think, right around the time when Netflix did start getting anime. So, and they had a lot of the big stuff like Full Metal Alchemist and Death Note and all that. So it was just me cycling through those. And then I was like, well, I want to watch other stuff. Everyone's like, you should download Crunchyroll. Because I was like, okay, fine, I'll pay $6 a month for this shit. But it's still overwhelming. Like, because I moved here 2 months ago. I'm still catching up on things from last season. But this season, I'm only watching 2 anime. So it's like, okay, I can balance out the 7 from last season. And being a seasonal watcher, I feel like is so much easier because you're like, this is just the 1 day a week I have to watch 1 episode of each. But like I don't think I have watched a show that was recommended to me that's already finished in probably like 2 or 3 years, because I'm like, I don't have time to sit down and watch
and like binge all of this.
Anymore.
Yep. So what were so since then, like from 2014 to now, like what were some of the highlights, right, of you're trying to catch up with, or you know, stay up to date with seasonal stuff? What were like some of those moments? We talked to Michael Higham right before this of like third eye opening. Holy shit, this is like a peak point of the medium. Did you have any like early on? Did you have any of those like third eye opening, like holy shit, I didn't realize anime as a medium could be this? What were those?
Literally, when I started watching seasonals was right around when the Hunter x Hunter anime ended. So that was like, I remember like that was like right when I joined Twitter, and people were like, I joined Twitter for comedy, and then I was randomly like, who here watches anime? And then I like looked up and like Hunter x Hunter was like trending, which was way before like anime Twitter stuff, but like people were like, Hunter x Hunter ended so well, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, I'll watch this. And I was like, well, this has ruined my life. And then it was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That was right when the part 1 and 2 had just finished and part 3 was getting into it. So those were the next 2 big ones where I was like, holy shit. And then it was Haikyuu, which was another one. So those were like the next 3, which are all my favorite anime. So it's like, I would say those 3. And then it was right around like 2000, maybe 15, if my timeline's right, when One Punch Man season 1 came out. And then I started seeing anime grow in popularity.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next year My Hero Academia started. And then from there it was just like, yes, a lot of shonen, but all good shit. Like I used to make fun of Naruto and Bleach and all them, because I'm like, this is just the same story with like a different, instead of ninjas, it's like reapers or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this is samurai.
This is
instead of
like
ninjas,
different
blah, blah,
flavoring.
blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then it's like, well, Hunter x Hunter's not like that. No, I guess I like sports anime. And oh, everyone in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure looks like a grown man, but they're 12. So yeah, it was just like, I just realized like, oh my God, there's more out there than just like edgy teenagers with superpowers, you know? Just more edgy teenagers with superpowers, really.
Yeah. But that was the cool shit back then, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, like so sorry, I have like 4 different questions that are just
I
like
have so much. You gave me 20 minutes. I'm like, that's impossible.
I know.
But
You're the last guest. It's weird because I think you're going to be the second guest in the show, and you're the last guest I'm recording with. And I think I realized right before we started recording that this is going to be like a 3-hour episode. So I just got to lean into it at this point.
I know that Lisa doesn't stop talking. Cut me off, please. I need you to. But yes.
So yeah, you're getting into the kind of big seasonal stuff. Along the way, are you finding any anime that you would consider to be like more deep cuts or not part of the typical like kind of shonen explosion that like you really gravitated towards?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd say there's a lot of them because yeah, like naturally everyone gravitates towards like what's the next big shonen, but like a lot of the anime that I really liked were on things like Amazon Prime. Like one of my favorite animes of all time is Banana Fish, which is like 2018, but nobody watched it because it's on Prime and they don't advertise their anime. But like that one is like a shoujo manga from the 80s that's kind of like a BL story, and then I was like, is anyone watching this? And nobody was watching this. And I was like, how are you not watching this? Except for women. I was like realizing all the women were watching the good anime. I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Shoya Genroku Rakugo Shinju.
All right, that's a
Was
mouthful.
another
Yeah,
one that
yeah.
came out, I think 2018, maybe 2017. That was like not a shonen, a drama series with older protagonists in like their 40s, 50s, beyond. Where I was like, oh my god, like I'm really into this. March Comes In Like a Lion was another one. Yeah, like it was just like I needed something that wasn't like just like, oh, I'm gonna get you and I got the power of friendship and death or whatever. Like I need something beyond that. And so I started watching things that were like a little more like serious drama stuff because I realized like the things that I really resonated with was characters and visuals. And so I'm like, what's a good like visual storytelling, which is Rakugo. And then I watched that and I was like, this is incredible. So and now my taste is like all over the place.
Well, it's good because there's a lot that anime can offer. So yeah, like I feel myself slowly getting to those steps because as the audience knows, as I said in the show earlier, you know, Mike, my co-host, and I are like very green still. Like we're in our baby steps, and so that's why we wanted to have a bunch of guests on who could school us because we're just a few idiots just talking about anime.
How dare you like the thing? I do not understand gatekeeping. How do you get mad at someone for liking what you like? Like
Because you don't like it as hard as I do, okay?
You are not making me special. What is wrong with you?
So has it been tough over the years to like keep up with everything, especially like in the boom? I feel like I've been around a lot of people even before I got like back into anime in the more modern era. I've been around a lot of friends who are into anime. It feels like everything kind of went into this big boom around like 2016, like to 2018. So like, I guess, how do you find the time for it all is kind of like my big question. I guess like
Chronically single for 5 years, which really helps. But no, it's hard now because I live in LA. Everyone's like, "Are you caught up on Mashal and Oshinoko?" I was like, "No, I'm happier now. I'm not watching anything." No, I usually dedicate like time away. I started watching a lot things in dub, which is like totally like, yeah, you watch dub? What's wrong with you? Because yeah, dude, I can't read subtitles while I'm working all the time. So sometimes I'll switch to dub. Recently, like I have OCD, so like I literally write on my calendar like today, record with KindaFunny at 3. Next, watch the newest episodes of JJK, catch up on Witch of Mercury, like that. I write it down on a schedule, like what day the show releases, what day the episodes release, so I can catch up on it because like, and also I started not being afraid to drop things. Like,
yeah.
I know a lot of people like you that are really new to anime and they want to watch everything, and I'm like, it's not worth it.
Like, save yourself.
Like you might, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of anime I've missed in the last few years that were amazing, but I don't think they're ever going to become my favorites. Like you can just tell when you see something and you're like, plus like, you know, like once I saw like Run with the Wind and Mob Psycho and Gintama, all that, it's like I already know what I like, and so I'm just trying to find something around those. So I'm not going to waste time watching, you know, I got reincarnated as a predator in another world. Like like I'm not going to waste my time on that series.
God, the amount of reincarnated as a
in another universe, like.
Oh man, I feel like I dreamed this, but was the reincarnated as like a vending machine thing real?
Yeah, that's
Fuck.
that's
Okay.
right now, and everyone's like, "You should watch it. It's funny." I'm like, "I'm sure it's terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's gonna get worse. I'm sure it's gonna be quirky for 2 episodes, and I'm gonna hate it."
Yeah, I thought I had a fever dream with that. So it's glad to know that I didn't actually have a fever dream, and that's actually real. Lisa, it's been a fantastic time having you on. Before we go, the last question I have for you is, what is one anime you don't think people talk about enough?
Run with the Wind.
Run with the Wind. What is that one about?
It is. Oh my god. Oh my god. How much time do you have? No, I'm kidding. I watched a lot of sports anime in the last few years, mainly because I needed to be motivated. But Run with the Wind is a lot different than a lot of them because the protagonists are all in their mid-20s. They're in college. They have real problems. And the catch is, like, usually sports anime is underdogs or like prodigies, and these are dudes that just do not do anything. Like, they're inside a dorm that they realize was for the track team, but it's cheap, so they have to join the track team and train for a marathon in order to keep the dorm. And then while you're watching, you're like, yeah, this is about running, and then you realize running has become kind of a metaphor for their own personal traumas and issues, and then it's beautifully well written because it's also based off a book, which I think helps a lot, versus, like, instead of trying to catch good action visuals, it's more focused on the development and the dialogue. And I watched it during a really rough time in my life when it was seasonal back in like 2018, 19. And when it was done, I was like, this is a perfect anime. Like, there's nothing, this is beautiful from beginning to end. And it's one that I have pushed so much on other people, so maybe more people are talking about it now because the people who love it are annoying. But, like, there's no merch for it. Like, it took them forever to release a DVD. Like, it's not a popular series, and I need it to be a popular series. So all of you go watch it if you want to cry over some out of shape men
Running, with all of their hearts
you
in
go
it.
watch it.
I will. It's a busy time for me personally, to the point where I'm getting similar to you, where it's like I can keep up with, like, thankfully Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen didn't really overlap too much, where it's like I have time for one anime a week, and right now it's Jujutsu Kaisen, and maybe once we get past this year, I'll have time to find some more time for some exploring some more anime when there's not a million games coming out and Star Wars stuff isn't popping up, and I've got all of these different projects that I'm working on. But yeah, I will definitely write that down. Run with the Wind, which I see if you are subscribed to Prime, you can watch. So that might be
From Prime and Crunchyroll.
Ooh, all right, Crunchyroll. That's where I'll watch it.
23 episodes.
Hell yeah.
So there you go.
It's good. I'll keep that in the back of my mind there for the future. Lisa, it's been a pleasure to have you on Kinda Anime. If people want to keep up with your thoughts on the current seasonal anime going on, or just what you're up to in the comedy world, where can people find you?
I'm mostly active on Instagram because that's where I post comedy clips, but I don't really post so much anime stuff on there. So Twitter, which is WISALALLEN. It's Wisa Wallen because my name was taken by some real estate agent. It's okay, I'll beat her up. And I stream on Twitch. So Twitch, if you want to come to my stream and ask me anime questions, like, you'll get a straightforward reply from me versus sliding into my DMs that I never read. So
All right, well, that's awesome. Keep up with Lisa and all the work she's doing. She's doing so much while also, catching up on anime, and then also doing stand-up, and then also Twitch streaming. Very busy. But Lisa, thank you once again for taking the time to come on and talk about why you love anime, what got you into anime, and all of that. But
this is all I want to do with my life. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I actually bugged you about it too, like months ago. I'm like,
you were the I will shout you out when we announced Kinda Anime as one of the big things, that one of the bar goals that we would hit when we launched the Spare Bedroom back in October, and we announced Kinda Anime as one of the stretch goals. If we hit a certain amount for the month of October, we would do 4 episodes. And I think it was either that day, the day we were doing a 24-hour stream for KindaFunny, or maybe the next day, you were the first person to hit me up, be like, yo, when can I come on and talk about some anime? So I'm sorry that it took 10 months, but we got there eventually.
Luckily, I still like anime. Maybe not in 2 months, but right now I really like it. So it's good that you had me on now before I got too happy.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. But let's take it to our next guest.
This episode's brought to you by Shady Rays. Take on the sun with gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures, just like Mike likes them. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. And every purchase supports the Shady Rays Impact Program, which works directly with nonprofits and their communities to empower and make adventure accessible for all walks of life, from childhood cancer patients to young adults with serious health conditions. Exclusively for y'all listening right now, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code KindaFunny for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Again, that's shadyrays.com. Use code KindaFunny. This episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Y'all know how much I love to stay hydrated, and Liquid IV makes it easier and better than ever to ensure that I'm always living my best, most hydrated life. And you can too. Liquid IV, the #1 powered hydration brand in America, is now available in sugar-free with 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients for everyday wellness. Liquid IV hydrates 2 times faster than water alone, and you can keep your daily routine exciting with 3 new flavors: white peach, green grape, and lemon lime. Let me tell you, the white peach is good. It's real good. We here at Kinda Funny swear by this stuff. 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. Real people, real flavor, real hydrating. Now sugar-free. Grab your Liquid IV hydration multiplayer sugar-free in bulk nationwide at Costco, or get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code KindaFunny at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you use promo code KindaFunny at liquidiv.com.
Welcome our next guest, a special friend of mine who I've known for a long time, to the show, Mike Mamon. Mike, how are you doing today?
What's up, Barrett? Doing real good. I'm excited to talk about anime.
You excited to be the third Mike on this episode?
Come on, baby.
Yeah, we should just make our own show. That's right.
The Mike Show.
You have the best name out of all 3 of the Mics, though. That last name really carries it. I like
the
that.
alliteration helps.
Yeah, I vibe with that, in fact.
Well, Mike, if people who are watching may not know you, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm Mike Mamon. If you don't know, I work at IGN, just like Barrett did way back when, and a lot of the Kinda Funny crew. So, and I do syndication and digital strategist over there. So we manage a lot of the YouTube channels for the most part. So anything you see on YouTube, I usually touch it. But I also been producing stuff. So producing mainly anime stuff now.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's very related to this subject. But every now and then, if there's a game that I can help with, I'll help there too. But mainly, I try to fill in the gap of anime coverage over at IGN. So yeah,
and that's good to hear because back in the day, you used to be on one podcast, Anime Club, I believe.
IGN Anime Club, yay anime for the OG folks that might be watching. The Anime Club podcast with Miranda Sánchez, Megan Sullivan, Callie was on there, Callie Plaguey.
That's a great lineup.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun. Any opportunity to talk about anime for an hour during work is always good.
Come on, yes.
So yeah, it was good. It was good, and I miss it dearly. But here we are.
So what type of anime stuff have you been producing lately?
Mostly seasonal coverage.
Okay.
Anime coverage for the most part isn't what I mainly do, so I tried not to take too much time away from what my duties. But seasonal updates are kind of like the go-to because it's very easy to. It's something that people are looking for. Mm-hmm. We do a thing where it's new to Netflix or new to streaming. Okay. But it's made like Hulu and all these platforms, but not really anime. We talk about all these live action shows let's talk about anime folks. Yeah. Like the Gokus and the and the Luffys. So being someone that was on the podcast and someone that kind of noticed this gap, I was like, I think we should try this again. Mm-hmm. So I've been like the summer season just started, so I just put out this what's new to watch this summer. So if you, for any reason, are looking for what to watch, and I made an article, you can check it out, or a video,
Not to fully spoil the article because people should go out and read it. What's one thing on there that you think people should watch?
I'll talk about the very new stuff, which would be Zom 100.
Okay, I've been hearing a lot about that.
Yeah, Zom 100 is a new title. Pretty much, man, it's kind of real, to be honest. Like, like the work-life balance. Like, essentially, the guy goes into an office, like, optimistic. It's like, I'm a new hire. I'm going to get started. It's going to be great. I'm going into production. And then he finds out that the company is, like, exploiting their coworkers. And then, so, he gets really depressed and then finds out he's in a zombie apocalypse, like, in the next few days. And then he's like, I don't have to go to work. And so he's actually excited about the zombie apocalypse because he doesn't have to go to work. And then he starts making this bucket list of things to do before he turns into a zombie. So,
this sounds right up my alley. I like this. That sounds really cool.
It's really cool.
And also, this article is exactly what I need, right? I need a small guide of like, hey,
dude.
What's new? What's fresh? Oh, give me something fun then. Maybe
I got you, man. I even linked out to all the platforms if you're interested.
There you go. That's what Mike needs. Because I come to we don't talk ever, and then once every 3 months I go up to Mike. I'm like, hey, we need to figure out what this kind of anime episode is going to be about. So that's great. People should go check that out over at IGN.
Great resource.
I assume it's called like what to watch for the summer season or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. New anime to watch.
Okay.
And then summer.
Okay, cool.
Hell yeah. Mike, to get people more knowledgeable on you and your tastes in anime, what is your favorite anime of all time? I know it's a big question.
Yeah. I think I've talked about this anime enough that I think it's the obvious answer, and it's One Piece. It's definitely One Piece.
Come on, man. Let's get up on board and talk about it, big dog.
Yeah, dude, One Piece, in high school, I binged the crap out of that. And then I just wouldn't stop. And then now I'm caught up to the point where, like, we're in Wano now. It's 1,000+ episodes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I can't get enough. And I'm doing a rewatch right now with my partner.
Yo, that's fun.
I've been seeing those updates every once in a while.
That's great.
She gave up, and I'm like, why?
No.
Why?
How many episodes in was it?
We're in Wano now.
Well, like for your partner, like that's where they gave.
Yeah, we're in Wano.
Oh shit.
Yeah, we started about a year and a half ago.
Amazing.
Okay. Jeez, in my head that was. And I know it doesn't make sense. Like 4 months ago was like that's when it started, but it's crazy that was like a year and a half ago. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, pandemic and all that.
How much were you guys watching? Like when we talk about that rewatch, what's the average episode amount? Because me and my friend Kevin, who is taking me through the One Piece journey, we'll have nights where maybe we watch one, but usually it settles in about 4 to 5 a night is where I find that we're watching. I can't. He's like, you want another one, Mike? I'm like, put on another one. Like, let's not stop.
That's a pretty good rate.
We're about 4 to 5 a night is right.
Yeah, that's good. We were doing like 1 to 2 a night.
Okay, that's
kind
good.
of just watch it while we're eating dinner or something.
Of course.
But then there'll be like an arc that she's like really into. And then there's like a huge cliffhanger and like, I gotta watch the next one. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Oh, that happened to me last night. Of course, I was telling Barrett on this episode, everybody heard, I just finished up Water 7 in Ennie's Lobby.
Yes.
Which it was an incredible arc. But of course, now the fun part is, well, what are they going to do next? Yep. Where are they going to go? And I'm like, Kevin, what's up? And he's like, I think there's a couple filler episodes. And no, right off the rip, they're like, oh, we're going to set you up for what's next. Is right. And I loved every moment of that. I couldn't get enough.
I'm so excited for you. Water 7 and... are you at the next area now, or?
Let's see. What have we got? We still have not left Water 7 because, of course, minor spoilers for everyone. We are building something that, of course, will take us to the next area.
Okay, cool.
But we do get cool hints, like we're meeting new dope pirates. We're also now getting introduced. We know the warlords, we know the Marines, but now there's the emperors of the Grand Line, and those are pretty dope. Of like, who are those badass dudes?
Oh man, I'm gonna try not to talk more because I'm excited for what
he's got to come.
No, you got to talk all about it. You gotta get us
you're about to
up.
get there. For someone like me who's not going to get even to where you're at for another like 5 years, I'm on episode 86. I've been meeting Chopper for like the last 6 months.
So I can finally say it. We're getting the new boat. And it's so exciting, man.
There you go.
So cool, man. You say goodbye to the Going Merry, and it's like, oh man, we just got introduced to it, and everybody's on board, and Sanji's yelling, where's the kitchen? I got to see it. And Nami's like, oh man, talk about the sails. And then Zora's like, I'm going to take a nap on this grass. And I'm like, this is the greatest. It's amazing.
Yeah, that whole arc is great. I love that arc so much. Probably my favorite arc, to be honest.
Oh, that was great, because that was going to be my next question, is your favorite arc, so.
Yeah, I thought about this a lot, and I was also asked this question like years ago on the old IGN Anime podcast, and I think I think my answer is still the same. I think Water 7. I think a little bit, because you have a good chunk of the crew already.
Yeah.
You know, and there's also the conflict with the world government.
Of course.
Up until that point, and it's just like, and of course Mary going Mary.
Yes.
Usopp and Luffy, that whole like conflict too. Like there's just so much going on. It's like a very meaty arc, very emotional arc. A lot of cool stuff happens, and it's like probably the biggest like jump in terms of like threat to like the world in regards to like Luffy's crew and what's going on.
Buster Call.
Yeah.
What that can be.
Like all of that, just all like encapsulated in like Water 7 NES lobby. So yeah, that was a good. And I mean, Wano, when you get there, might have an argument. There's just so much going on right now, but I won't say too much about
See,
that.
now that gets me interested, right? And that's why I want to talk with you, because you've watched so much One Piece. Should that be concerning to myself and other fans of like everybody? I'm on Reddits and people are saying Water 7 in Ennie's lobby. Is that a problem being 1,000 episodes and you're telling me 700 aren't going to be as good as this? Like, is that a worry for fans? Or are they good? They're just not as good. Like, what's the deal with that kind of statement?
Just like the comparisons and all
Yeah,
that?
just saying like, you love this one, but this is only 300 episodes in, but I got to get to 1,100. So you tell me the next 800 aren't that good?
Gotcha. I mean, honestly, it just builds upon itself.
Okay.
I think my excitement for Wano is because I've been on this journey with the crew this whole time. And just, but also in terms of like, I think just the team behind One Piece is also excited. And they've stepped up their game so much that it's just movie quality, like animation going on right now. And everyone's excited all around, whether it's just like, fans that just want to like sneak in and see what's up, or like
I've seen some. I peek at some clips on Twitter every once in a while, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is where we're gonna get, because like right now I'm still back in the stuff in like the 90s and early 2000s and stuff.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom that that's where the show is gonna build to animation quality wise.
Yeah, it's really the journey. Like every time people ask me like can I jump in somewhere or whatever, can I skip stuff? I'm like, not really. Like I find myself even watching fillers, or at least back in the day when I was first watching One Piece, I was like, I didn't know what fillers were, or at least what they could be on One Piece. And like when I did get to it, I'm like, I didn't even really notice, like the fillers were that they kind of just worked.
That's
whereas
yeah. People are like, oh, it's a filler. I'm like, it was a good episode to me. I had no problem with it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
In comparison to like, I don't know, Naruto or Bleach, where like, okay, this is Dragon. Right. But granted, like, One Piece is just like, there's a lots of love for One Piece. And I think the world building and just the adventure as a whole, the characters themselves, I think it makes it very easy to like watch the 1,000 episodes.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, 4 a night, I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
Sorry to hijack it, Bear, but I want to go back. You in high school, you said this is your favorite. You started back then, you watched it. Why One Piece, right? We've had Michael Higham on. He talked about Dragon Ball. He talked about Evangelia. He talked about freaking Death Note. Why did you land on One Piece?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, even before, so high school, yes, I did run into One Piece. Before that, I mean, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, and like a lot of the Voltron. Randomly
That's the first Voltron shout out I've heard.
Yeah,
That's
like
awesome.
local TV, they had like a bunch of oldies there, but at that time I didn't even know they were anime. I'm just like, oh, this is like Saturday morning cartoons or cartoons after school. It wasn't until high school where I was like, oh, this is anime, and then that's when I started watching Naruto, and then my friend recommended Bleach, and then I ran into One Piece, and I can't really remember. I think I might have just heard that this was a very popular series, and I was just really bored one summer, and then I just binge watched like whatever episodes I did that summer, and I couldn't stop. And
Wow.
I know. And it's weird because I remember One Piece being on Fox Kids.
Oh, yeah.
The English dub?
Because let me tell you the disappointment. I'm going to bring up our friend Ian Preschel again, where it was one night we're hanging out at my house, and we're both talking about how amazing the intro is to One Piece. And he's like, oh, it's so beautiful. Like, it's such a lovely intro. And in my head, I'm like, it's just a fun little rap, man. Because in my head, for the longest time, the One Piece intro was that 4Kids like Fox intro where it's like, "Yo, this is Luffy. This is what he's got to say," and it like destroyed him. And then he showed me the actual intro to like that first whole like 50 episodes, and I was like, "Oh, okay, now I get what you're talking about." Because that song gets stuck in my head every once in a while.
Yeah, I honestly didn't remember the rap until I think Callie brought it up one time. And it's like,
It's true.
yeah.
I went back to it like a year ago, and I was like, man, why did I think this was cool back in middle school or some shit?
No, yeah, I thought it was that and like what was that? It was like that fried rice hero character, like food fighting. Do you remember that?
Food fighting. Well, well, maybe Boba Bo.
No, it's something different. But
Okay.
like I don't know why, but that cartoon or anime was very reminiscent of One Piece. And I was just very forgetful when it was on 4Kids because I was watching Pokemon and Digimon, you know.
Fighting
Yeah.
Foodons?
Maybe. Yeah. Is it like a
right.
fried rice dude?
Hold on, I'll pull up an image.
yeah.
Literally like a plate of fried rice
Oh,
on top of a
interesting.
body.
Okay.
Yeah. That,
Like
but
powdered
anyway,
toast.
I'll show you this
yes,
image right
that's
here.
the one. Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Hell yeah.
I don't know why that just popped in my head, but I was like, 4Kids and anime. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, are you reading the manga? Are you? Also, I want to ask you for game recommendations, but let's talk about the books. Are you reading the books?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm
Ever read the books? No desire to read the books?
So for me, like, I enjoy like kind of the animation and music a lot when it comes to really anything that I watch, and so for anime in particular, like there's one scene in the anime that's not in the manga, and that's when Nami asks Luffy for help, and then they had that walk to Arlong Park.
Here it comes.
And they got that
Yeah.
music, right? And then
Oh, yeah, and he puts the
badass
hat on her head.
stroll and punches through the wall, you know. And yeah, that's not in the manga. That whole walk, or at least it's not like
It's
a
it's
whole
a
scene.
panel, right?
Yeah, it's like a whole scene. And so yeah, it's things like that. Like just really like gets me going in the moment. Whereas like reading that and then watching it, I'm sure like.
It hits in like a different way. Or
Yeah, like but like part of I think it's the expectation too.
Yeah.
I think knowing what's gonna happen kind of like fizzles a little bit with me when it comes to like media. Like I think I had one. I used to read like the Aragon books, weirdly enough.
Oh hell yeah!
And yeah, my sister had
Dragons
them.
were cool as fuck back then, you know.
I know. I was just like, oh, this is all right. Yeah. And then I watched the movie. I'm like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
So not to say that's the reason why I don't read manga, but like
No, I
Yeah.
get what you're saying because that's where I'm at right now with My Hero. Where it's like I got like super into My Hero and now I'm like catching up like weekly with the manga.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe this is more of a unique thing with My Hero right now because where the manga's at is all over the place. But yeah, and similar with and actually on the opposite end, Demon Slayer was another one where I binged through all of that manga and now I'm excited to see like all of that stuff like animated and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird like line to walk, but I understand where you're coming from. Where
Yeah.
it's like you don't want to like fizzle out on like if you go way too into the manga, are you really going to keep up with the show and all that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another part of the reason is like I didn't have like physical manga, and this took too much space, dude. Like I just
Oh,
can't.
I was telling Barrett, I have this dream that I buy them all. And it's just like, then
the
I
One
have the
Piece
reality of
manga?
like, where am I going to put it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
There's
But I
a, there's
want
a
it.
like long. Have you
Yeah,
seen
they got
that?
the big war chests. Yeah,
I'm
want
struggling
that.
with 27 volumes of My Hero. So.
Oh, I want 100 pluses, right? It is fun to go to Japantown here and see all of them up on display, and you go, oh man, like seeing them in real life right in front of you with all the different colored covers, all of the artwork on it. It's like, man, this is so cool. And then like if you turn them sideways, you start looking and going, okay, I don't know if I have the book space for this, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the music is what gets me as well. You're so right on like the music and the cues are so incredible. And that interstitial at the middle of like where the quote unquote commercial break would be, I love that, right? The wanted poster comes, each character has their own incredible sound. It's like,
Yeah.
I can close my eyes and you could play the sound and I'd be like, oh, that's Nami. Oh, it's Robin now. Like, I love that they do that. And I think it's so cool, is right.
Yeah. No, they do a very unique stuff with each series without that. It's really fun to see. But yeah, no, yeah, just anime watcher, man.
That's dope.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of hours, free hours, gone.
So we already talked a bit about like you had a coming up with when you were a kid watching certain shows, not really realizing it's anime, and then like having that moment in high school, finding Naruto, finding One Piece. I would say that was probably the moment where you kind of knew of like, all right, I'm into anime, I'm into this, I want to like learn more about this or get more into it. Since then, like, what have been like the big highlights for you? We talked with Michael Higham earlier in the show about like his like kind of third eye opening moments where he like watches Evangelion for the first time. Like, what were kind of any big moments like that for you where you first time watching or finishing an anime where you're like, God damn, this really affected me in some sort of way?
Man, that's a very good question. I mean, just to preface, like I watched too much anime sometimes. I mean, especially with the watch reads I do for IGN, like I have to kind of watch a lot.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a blur, honestly. But yeah, that's an interesting question. So between high school and essentially now,
Yeah.
any like oof. Yes. I mean, there's always like one series that, you know, I guess Fullmetal Alchemist is one. You know, like everyone was into it. The music, Asian Kung Fu Generation, like we were so into that for like one of our like high school festivals, like I used to like, I don't know if Tim saw this because we went to the same high school, but like there's like performances, and at the time I was in band, I was playing percussion. We were performing Asian Kung Fu Generation music
Hell yeah.
from the anime.
That's dope. That's really rad.
like just in the quad, like, oh man,
God.
people think we're weird.
There's something in the water. But there's something in the water over that high school, and I know which high school it is because that was the same high school where Tim did the whole was it
Mario
the
thing?
Super Mario
Yes.
thing on the theater? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Tim
So
was,
y'all were a bunch of fucking nerds.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, not to put the high school name on blast, but that was the representation. That was the
Yeah, that's
perception of
fair.
that high school was y'all were a bunch of nerds.
yeah. I'm sure the Japanese club was super excited that we were doing that. But yeah. So yeah, definitely I would say Full Metal. I mean, more recently, I get like you can't really like all the shonen. Like I'm really into shonen, obviously.
Right.
So like Demon Slayer was a big one. Jujutsu Kaisen. Oh my god. Jujutsu Kaisen season 2.
I haven't watched the third episode yet.
That's okay.
And
Slowly.
yeah, and
catch
yeah,
up.
this episode's in a weird time capsule or will come out like more later into the season. But yeah, I've talked about my journey enough. But yeah, that's a fucking fantastic show.
Like I think anytime a big shonen drops and everyone's into it, it's kind of nice to see because like everyone wants to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
The people that don't really watch anime or they have time to like watch one thing are watching it. So I would say those moments are kind of nice.
Yeah, like Chainsaw Man and how that
Oh,
took over
yeah,
the world.
exactly.
That was a cool
Like,
moment.
everyone
like you
was
said.
excited for that. It was crazy. And like, and then, you know, you got the movies too, like Spirited Away, speaking of actually.
Oh yeah.
I think watching that for the first time too was kind of mind blowing. I don't even remember if I was in theater or whatever, but like probably one of my first Ghibli movies. And yeah, definitely still to this day, one of my most favorite of the Ghibli movies.
Oh yeah, it's similar for that's definitely my favorite of that studio, and just in general, like one of my favorite movies of all time. So I definitely understand that. Mike, it's been a fucking pleasure to hang out with you. You and I have not seen each other in quite a while, so it was great to find an excuse to hang out with you, learn about your anime journey and all that stuff. The question I want to leave you with before, obviously, we share where to follow you and all that stuff is: what is one anime you don't feel like enough people talk about?
Enough people talk about.
Yeah.
Ooh. Really, I just want people to watch this because it's an older one and not a lot of people watch it nowadays.
Okay.
Hajime no Ippo. If One Piece didn't exist, Hajime no Ippo would probably be my favorite anime.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
big words right there. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's
I mean,
big.
you know, I love my shonen, but I also love, you know, I mean, I guess this is also technically shonen, but I love my sports anime too.
Oh man.
So yeah, this boxing anime.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll
It's on
recognize,
Crunchyroll.
probably recognize this image over
this
here.
guy?
Dope.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was going to ask you because I saw the Warriors hats and we just got done watching Blue Lock, which I really enjoyed.
nice.
And that was my quote unquote first sports anime. I watched Skate the Infinity and I loved that.
Nice.
Right. And so, oh, dude, come on. That's so good, man.
That's a good choice.
That's a great one. And so
Yeah.
Blue Lock was good where I was like, because I've seen the volleyball up on this tiles before. And I'm
haiku,
like,
yeah.
how could you do that? Like, no way that you would make this any fun. And I watched Blue Lock and I was like, oh man, they made soccer fun to watch in an anime. And now we'll have some homework where we're going to watch the volleyball one. But that's boxing is what you're recommending here?
Yeah, boxing.
Oh, I'm in on that. Okay.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's so good. I mean, until this day, the animation is still top notch.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's you said it's a bit of an older one back in like the 2000s. I'm getting thrown off here because like obviously the manga cover feels
Sure.
more 80s and 90s, but then seeing like the art for the anime seems
Yeah, I want to say 2000s maybe.
okay.
When it came out, like it definitely looks dated, but it's still good.
I mean, like even this feels more reminiscent of like the era for Alchemist Brotherhood rather than like original Alchemist, So like it looks
I see.
dated.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
But hell yeah. People go out and watch Hajime no Ippo, if I'm saying that correctly.
No, you got it. Yeah.
Mamon, it's been a fucking pleasure, like I said already. Where can people find you, keep up with you, where you're talking about anime and all that stuff?
Yeah.
I want to hear your voice.
Well, if you can find me on IGN, like doing stuff with anime over there, but also you can follow me at XP M&Ms on pretty much all my socials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. You give One Piece updates every once. in
Oh
a
yeah,
while.
yeah. It's all mainly on Twitter. Like
Yeah.
There we go.
yeah, my little whole rewatch journey with my partner is on Twitter. So
And you've been updating that. You still updating?
yeah, there's. I mean, it's been a while, but I do want to update. We're getting to a good part in Wano, which I do want to share with the world. I feel like so.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I like
check.
that.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's take it to our final guest, I think, question mark. Maybe not. I don't know what the order is anymore. But let's take it to our next guest. All right, welcome to the show. Our next guest, Kate Sánchez. Kate, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing really, really good. I'm really excited to talk about some anime.
I know. Yeah, we've been talking about anime this entire episode. I'm excited to get you in here to talk about anime because I feel like you're the one most ingrained out of everybody I know in the anime industry, covering everything that you can under the sun on But Why Though? But for people who may be tuning in and aren't familiar with you or your work, Kate, who are you and what do you do?
I am Kate Sánchez. I am the editor-in-chief and co-founder of But Why Though? We are an indie entertainment outlet that covers everything from anime, TV, film, video games, comics. Like we went from being at SDCC, or actually from being at Anime Expo to being at SDCC to now we're at Outfest LA, which is a queer film festival, as well as Fantasia Film Festival, which is a genre film festival. So we do literally everything under the sun, and we do it from a diverse lens. So yeah, that's what we do. Personal stuff. I've been, I guess, for like the credentials of the anime, I've been a 3 times Crunchyroll Anime Awards judge. I routinely do panels with Crunchyroll. Last month, actually this month, I did one on Latin America and anime and how it was really influential to the the explosion of anime in the US. And then at South by, I actually did a panel on anime and the music industry and how it interacts. So, I do all that stuff.
You're one of the busiest people in the business, some would say. It's been really cool. It blows my mind anytime I feel like you're promoting like 5 or 6 different things a day, just everything that you're covering, whether it's panels, whether it's reviews, any of that stuff. It's been really cool to see. So, definitely check out Kate's work over at But Why Though and that fantastic crew over there. Because like I said at the top of the show, Mike and I aren't always around to cover anime and talk about anime, and the whole point was to introduce you to a bunch of different voices to keep up in the anime world. So yes, definitely check all of that work out. Kate, for people to have people grasp a little bit more of what your specific tastes are, it's a big one. It's a big question. What is your favorite anime of all time and why?
I've been thinking about this, man, and if you had asked me like pre-March, I would have said Revolutionary Girl Utena. But post-March, with the release of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, I'm actually Jujutsu Kaisen 0 I've read the manga. I know what's happening. It's not necessarily the greatest, but I've gotten this like really interesting emotional connection with Jujutsu Kaisen. I think one, I am an action person through and through. One of the things we do at our site is highlight international media, not just in anime, but international film as well. And a lot of that is highlighting the action space coming out of East Asia. I mean, Asia in general. And so for me, Jujutsu Kaisen is this extremely beautiful blend of fantastic action choreography and fight scenes from MAPPA and then also a really intricate story about how people handle grief and loss and how that interacts with curses. And I think that what we're going to see in season 2, people are going to get hit with an emotional damage hammer, and it's weird. It's a recent anime, it's a recent manga too, but I've thought about it and how I kind of look at my relationship to it, and I think that I, for a long time, thought I wasn't a fan of shonen. I mean, I loved DBZ. I watched all the shonen. I watched Tenchi Muyo. I watched different things, but it never really grasped me in a way. And then this recent wave of like horror adjacent shonen, Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen, it's just kind of pulled me in with like the different ways that they balance their protagonists against kind of a really crappy world. So that's, yeah. I'm gonna say Jujutsu Kaisen.
Well, that's very fitting, especially with season 2, which again, like we said earlier in the episode, we're recording this in a weird time capsule. So by the time this episode comes out, we'll be a few more episodes in. But as what I talked about earlier, I'm only 2 or 3 episodes into season 2, and I am waiting for the gut punches of where it's going. But it's interesting. Anime really brought me in, I think, because of the more shonen stuff, and Jujutsu Kaisen for sure is a standout. And I've talked about this story plenty of times where at first it didn't really grab me because of the super grim dark world, despite loving just number one dipshit Yuji Itadori, and the contrast between
just so happy.
He's just so happy, and it's such a contrast to what the rest of that world is. But I remember you and I talked at a preview event. We were talking about Jujutsu Kaisen 0, and I think it was either right before that or right after that I actually had finally watched that, and that is the thing that got me into that world more so than season 1, which was a really cool experience. So
season 1 is a slow dipping into the world, and Yuji is just this Pollyanna of he's a golden retriever. That is what Yuji is. He's a golden retriever who ate something he shouldn't have and is now having to deal with the consequences. But Jujutsu Kaisen 0, and if I could pick that as my favorite anime of all time, I would. But it's because you have a sad boy, but not just a sad boy. You have somebody whose entire growth arc in the film is just Yuji wants to protect life and other people's life because he believes in his own survival and in the survival of everybody. Yuta Okotsu's trajectory in that story is just finding the will to live in and of himself, and that I think for the type of world that we're in and how dark it gets sometimes you need that little message to push through. So.
Yeah, that was definitely a big highlight. It's just the more I felt more connected to him as a protagonist. I love Yuji, but his personal story and finding the will to live and finding refinding the love he has for others was a huge kind of moment for me when I realized what 0 was about. And so I totally get that. So that's your favorite anime of all time, we'll say, is the 0 movie. But and this is a thing that we're talking about throughout this episode, just because I feel there's so many different stories of what got people into anime. And so I want to direct that question to you: is what has been your anime journey up until now? What got you into it? What was the inciting moment, and what's been the journey ever since?
Yeah, I think this is always an interesting question. And I've answered a lot, especially on panels, and I think I kind of discover a little bit of myself each time that I answer it and each time that it's kind of phrased. And Sailor Moon was my gateway anime. I guess technically DBZ, but that was on the TV in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish fluently, but that was on Telemundo at the time, and so I saw it and I was intrigued. But Sailor Moon was the story that pulled me in. And I think very specifically it pulled me in because it was a group of women fighting for people and going through everyday problems and troubles. But more specifically, I'm going to use their English translation names, Lena being Sailor Jupiter, and her balance between... It was the first time I had seen a tomboy be extremely feminine as well. She would kick your ass in video games and physically, but then she was still going to go home and bake cupcakes. And I think that for me was a really important image as a kid, because I have always been surrounded by guys my entire life. Like, I wasn't super attractive growing up or anything like that. I was like a little chubby kid. I loved comics and Star Wars because my boy cousins raised me. And so, like, the girls didn't necessarily want to be around me. And that was just kind of like my safe haven. And always kind of struggled of like, okay, well, how do I represent myself when I want to be accepted by my friends, but if I'm too feminine, then I become kind of pushed outside of the group that is giving me life almost. And so I pushed away a lot of it. And as I've grown up and obviously embraced the color pink, if you can see from like what's on camera here, and grown more feminine, anime has actually been really pivotal in that journey. I think traditionally I was drawn to anime because there were no Latino shows on television. There was nobody that looked like me. It just didn't exist. Even when my grandma would watch novellas, there's no brown-skinned women in that. They're all really, really light-skinned. And I'm not saying that like anime represented me specifically, but it represented somebody that was different, and it represented a culture that was different, and a culture that had really similar values to Latin values that I think really resonated with me. But then and that's how I got into it. But if I look at how it's been a mainstay in my life, it's been a mainstay because of the women in anime that I have fallen in love with. Like, I'm wearing a Faye shirt right now. Like, she's also a badass who everybody kind of, if you don't know Cowboy Bebop, you write her off as being somebody written for the male gaze, when really she is a femme fatale who is in complete control of her sexuality and agency and knows how the world looks at her, and then exploits that to get forward because of what life has given her, and she processes her own trauma and stuff like that. And I think that anime has a contentious relationship with women at some times, specifically in the shonen genre, and how it treats shoujo titles, even though shoujo is extremely robust, and you have action shoujo and magical girls and like everything under the sun. It isn't just romance. But I've found that the way that women in anime are allowed to embrace their femininity while still just being complete badasses has just resonated with me more and more, and has been really important for me to not feel like I need to dampen that part of myself to be accepted outside of writing and podcasting. I started out in academia, I moved into the tech industry, and now I work in the games industry full time. And those are spaces that all three of them aren't necessarily super welcoming of women. And so I have to not just code switch as a Latina, but code switch as a woman as well, is like really represent myself in a more masculine frame to get through the day most of the time. And I think anime is that space for me to explore things and see women who don't have to do that.
Does
that make sense?
Oh yeah, 100%. And here, and not to, to actually throw the rest of us under the bus, because Sailor Moon has actually been brought up a lot, but this is like a much more personal kind of moment to talk about Sailor Moon, which I absolutely adore, because I think for the rest of our guests, it was one of those that, like, it was on, similar to you with Dragon Ball. It was something that was on and like in the peripheral, and was kind of like that's kind of interesting, but more of like a gateway into something else. So that's awesome to hear of like how it kind of more affected you in such a way of how to proceed throughout different aspects of your life, which is awesome to hear. And so going off that, right? So Sailor Moon kind of being the big kind of moment for you getting into this, was it easy for you to find something similar past that? And this is just from my own ignorance of where especially the industry of anime when we were growing up, right? I don't particularly know of a lot of similar things like that, like Sailor Moon. So was that a hurdle, like past, like, all right, I'm into Sailor Moon, what else is out there? Was that a big hurdle for you, or were you finding yourself being able to get into other things in the anime realm? Like, what was that next step?
So I think two things. There was a Cardcaptor Sakura and Revolutionary Girl Utena, which I was able to watch. That was like the direct magical girl through line. To kind of give some context to the folks listening and watching, essentially what happened, and the reason there aren't that many magical girl shows or shoujo shows, is because licensing was extremely expensive for the United States. So Japan would throw all of their licenses to Latin America, and then what would work in Latin America, like Captain Tsubasa, Dragon Ball, even Saint Seiya, like to a point, like anything that worked there, it was their proof of concept to then pay the higher licensing fees to get it over and localized in the United States. However, one of the things that happened in that kind of lens is that you see a shift towards shonen because they were longer form series, more traditional to how the US ran our animated programming blocks. And so it led to it being a more shonen heavy piece. And if you don't know, shonen is a demographic, not a genre. It just means it is going towards young boys. About 11 to 18 is that sweet spot. Shoujo is the opposite, but for girls. And I think for me, what I realized of kind of like where the next piece was is Goku's a magical girl, y'all. Like, he does the same thing. He's transforming. Like, come on. Like, the jump from shoujo and magical girls to shonen is actually not that hard when your pipeline is Sailor Moon to Dragon Ball. And so I was able to take that leap. Tenchi Muyo as well was one that I watched a lot. Bleach. All of them are magical girls. Zanpakuto's. Come on. So I'm a part of the Toonami generation. I had the privilege of being surrounded by anime and trying new things. And then I would say what really solidified it for me was watching Inuyasha on Adult Swim, which a lot of people will misclassify Inuyasha as a shonen. It's actually not. It's a shoujo series. And that is because of the author, one of the most famous female mangaka. I think it's Rumiko. I'd forget her last name, but she is one of the most famous female mangakas out there, along with Full Metal Alchemist. And so there's a lot of crossover.
Really quick, Rumiko Takahashi, I believe.
There we go. Yeah, Rumiko Takahashi. Go read her work. Mason Ikaku is also a really good series. You should read that. It's only a manga. But yeah, she did like Ranma 1.5 and Inuyasha and all of these like pretty cornerstones for that 80s, 90s crowd. And then of course the 2000s with Inuyasha and Adult Swim, that ending theme that woke up everybody at like 10:30 when it was way louder than the rest of the audio. But yeah, I wouldn't describe it as hard. I think it was finding similar beats to latch onto. And I think when I talk about the transition, or even just like the bridge between shonen and shoujo, and then just looking at the archetype structure of anime in and of itself, is it's all about resilience. Every protagonist they always bend, and they bend to the point of breaking, but they never break. And their growth is going into that pit and then bouncing back out. And if you are okay with that, and you're okay with training, and you're okay with understanding that they're going to lose, instead of American stories where a lot of times they just keep winning, then the runway is long and wide for you to just keep going forward and finding new things.
Hell yeah. So this is an interesting one, because a theme that I've kind of picked up on with a lot of the conversations I've had this episode is a similar thing of between a lot of guests is we'll get into anime when we're really young, drop out, find it again a little bit in high school, college age, drop out, and then now we're in like our adult era where I feel like anime is having another boom, another explosion. So was it always like ever since Sailor Moon, and then jumping off of into different series, like you mentioned Inuyasha, which is another mainstay, because it was either Inuyasha that would wake you up, or the George Lopez theme at at 5 a.m. And so, was it always a constant for you? Did you feel any like kind of dried up in the well at all of like falling out of it and then coming back? Like what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I was really lucky. I went to a predominantly Black and brown high school. One of the things people don't realize is that being a weeb is actually really cool in Latin communities. All of our families watch Saint Seiya. All of our families watch Dragon Ball. Like, there was no reason to hide it. So I got to go through my entire middle school and high school just like really engrossed in anime. When I worked at Hot Topic, that was my favorite thing, was getting the different anime shirts.
Hell yeah.
Like, it was great. And so part of my life was really focused, but it was also very hard to get anything that wasn't on Cartoon Network. And I would say that like my manga reading and my anime kind of tracked. So like manga was also really hard to get. So I was a part of those early Scanlation, Fanlation like sites and stuff like that popped up on the internet. And then also like just going to go sit at a Barnes and Noble and read and not buy anything. And then I would go watch the anime if it was available. And so there was a lot of that, but because I had free time, I was able to find it. And then I would say in college, I just didn't have time or access to do any of it. I didn't have time, access, or money. And those are 3 things you needed before the advent of anime being on literally everything. And
Everything.
so, yeah, like Zom 100 is streamed on Hulu, Netflix, and Crunchyroll as a simulcast.
Wow.
Like that is unheard of
Yeah.
for the little mini weebs out there. So I dropped out of it in college, and then I would say when I went into the tech industry, I was just working a lot. I still loved anime, and so there were a couple of things I would keep up with, especially like once it was all out in season. And I just dropped off of reading manga completely, and then the pandemic happened, and I was like, "Oh, I have a lot of free time. What if I don't? That's all manga, like just stacked up along my wall." And so I just went down the rabbit hole, and I think March 2020, I actually decided to build it out as its own content section of the website. Because a lot of my writers love anime, but there was never really a pipeline or set up with like Crunchyroll or Funimation at the time to help them get screeners, help them get access, and make sure that we had support from the industry side. And so I just decided to weave out as much as I could. I bought statues, I bought manga. I dove into clearing up blind spots like My Hero Academia and some of the like the more recent shonen that had come out that I had just completely missed. And then I started building it with my people and taking their recommendations, watching as much as I can every season. And yeah, pandemic.
Wow, that's surprising to hear. Sorry if you hear a weird motor in the back. That's definitely a Prius that got a piece of it stolen. So it's the world's loudest Prius in the background there. That's interesting and surprising to me because I always associate But Why Though with the kind of anime side. So like honestly, like props to y'all in the matter of like I probably even like last year, like in the span of like 2 years, like building out the side of the website that I associate more with like what y'all do as a whole. So that's really cool, and that's surprising to hear because in you know my like kind of like in my head backstory, like But Why Though started like with like anime being like primary focus and stuff. So that's cool that was something where you were able to find time, and then because you were able to fall down the rabbit hole, you're like, all right, we're going all in on this. So that's really, really cool.
Thank you.
So to kind of wind down here, something that Mike and I were talking about, I think earlier on in the episode, is like what makes anime special as a medium to ourselves. And I'm more as someone who is so ingrained with everything, and you're trying to keep up with everything, and you're covering it. Like, what about anime is special to you? And this will kind of not this specific conversation, but this idea is going to lead into an interesting conversation later on in the show with Mike and myself when talking about One Piece and the live action adaptation for One Piece. So I'm just wondering like what anime means to you and like why is it special?
So first off, and this is one of the things that I love clearing up with people, is anime as we know it, it's a medium, not a genre. It is literally just Japanese animation. That's all it is. The beauty of anime is that Japan as a country has invested in their animation sector in both the long form series format, the short form series format, as well as with OVAs, and then the feature film piece. And the reason that this is really important is because in doing that and facilitating a production track from manga story or even original animation pieces, which I think you're seeing a lot more from like Mappa and Bones, but you have a runway to take really great stories that happen on paper, and then they immediately have a track to reach new audiences with the animation side. And so when we kind of pull back and look at what makes anime special is that it is one of the most robust areas of animation in the world. You have You have age demographics that are nearly untouched in the United States. Like seinen and josei anime it's all the rage right now, honestly. And when I say rage, I mean like they're just getting greenlit a lot more. You're having more adult things coming out, not in a silo of having to go like find a DVD of Ninja Scroll or Angel Sanctuary, but like you're having it be popular, like Devilman Crybaby on Netflix. And what happens with that inherently is you have more risks that get taken. A lot more light novels are being adapted, not just manga now, into anime. And that is something that I wish, like the respect for animation as a medium that exists in Japan is something that I wish existed in the United States. Because right now, our current animation landscape, and you can look at like the last 15 years of Oscars, it's almost always 4 of the nominees are the Disney films that came out that year. 1 goes to an international film, depending on what happened. Maybe it's where they'll do a twofer and it's an international film that was also adult. And you don't actually have an awards body either in the small critic circle, like the ones that I am in, like the Hollywood Critics or the Awesome Film Critics Society, or the Motion Picture Academy, that values animation as it pertains to groups other than children. And so what anime gives us inherently are stories that you can find yourself in. And you may not find it in MHA, but you may go and watch Chainsaw Man and really identify with that really sad guy who just wants to be in a union. Or you may turn on Utena and see your first representation of like a queer romance explicitly there. And that is what makes it beautiful, is that there is an anime for everyone. And I always tell people, like, okay, you may not necessarily like a particular anime style, but there are so many out there. You can find studios that are pushing the boundaries of not just mixing CGI with 2D, but representing 2, 3, sometimes 4 different types of 2D animation in one series and or film. And so what makes anime special is it is this medium to convey a lot of the stories that we want to be told here, but in a way that is respectful of the material and is showing it as the art that it is. One of the other things, and I think that you'll, if you actually look at the anime pipeline in Japan, is we poo-poo live action animation things here in the US a lot. We don't have a great track record, but this is common in Japan. If an anime succeeds, it becomes a live action in Japan. It doesn't matter if it's shoujo, it doesn't matter if it's shonen, it does not matter. You're even seeing more embracing of turning BL manga into live action series. And when that door kind of breaks down, it doesn't just say, oh, well, it has to be live action because that's more
official,
respectable or official.
Yeah.
What it does is it becomes a new entry point for people who may have had a wall up about anime because I don't want to watch animation, that's for kids. But then you go watch something and you're drawn in and you go back and you read all of the stories and you watch all of the episodes. And I think that there's just a symbiotic relationship between each piece of the storytelling pipeline in Japan as it pertains to manga, to anime, to live action, and then like the full circle that comes through, that I wish that we could replicate in the US. And I think you kind of get a hint of it with comics, but not really, because it's really just controlled by 2 companies and it's the same stories over and over for the most part. And you lose the beauty that is the diversity of genre. You lose the diversity of age demographics. And I think that respect towards storytelling as a medium is what makes animation in Japan special and important, because I can't get animated stories like I get out of watching like Belle or Inua or Goodbye Donglees or The Deer King or all the Miyazaki movies. Like I can't get that in the US because we just don't make that.
Yeah. Well, that was a fucking fantastic answer. That was such a deep, encompassing look at kind of our relationship from the West into the kind of anime stuff, and just is a big thinker. You're having me think about it on another level I had not before. So that's fucking awesome. Kate, it's been a goddamn pleasure to have you on Kinda Anime episode 3. Where can people find you and keep up with you if they want to hear more thoughts about whatever the new seasonal anime is, or cool coverage events that you might be going to? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Oh My Mythrandir on everything. I'm on Twitter until it dies. Who knows if by the time this releases,
it's X. It's X.
X.com. I can't tell my mother I'm on X.com. That sounds horrible. And I am on Instagram. My Instagram is actually all geared towards anime and manga. So that's where you will find all of that very specific content. And then I'm on Threads, same handle. I'm currently watching through One Piece because my best friend is a Straw Hat and she's like, you're going to come here. And I feel like she did like a little psyop. Like she brought me to the Toei booth at Anime Expo almost every day. So by the time I was done, I was singing We Are.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, I have to watch it now. So you can watch all that. But if you want to read my writing, it's at butwhythough.net. The anime is much more, the anime section is much more than me. We have a really great crew that are doing, I think, across about 10 to 12 different episodics. So you can get your episode reviews there, you can get your seasonal reviews there, and we cover every platform from High Dive and Crunchyroll to Netflix and Hulu. So yeah, we got you covered.
Wow, that's awesome. Go follow Kate. Go follow by the work over at but why though? Jeez. And Kate, thank you again so much for coming on to Kinda Anime. But let's take it to our final guest.
Yo, what up, everybody? Welcome back to our next interviewee. It's one Forbes 30 under 30, the king of Halloween, but the king of anime. Ooh, he's got swagger. This is my guy, Blessing Adeoye Jr. What up, Bless?
What's up, Mike?
Bless, it's nice to have you on Kinda Anime.
Yeah.
Of course, as you know, episode 3 has been all about Barrett and I bringing on our friends, our family, awesome people around the world, talking about their favorite anime and just what got them into anime. And of course, you're here in the studio. You and I and Barrett used to talk Anime Thursdays on our streams whenever we could, and we watched some shows together. Code.
Yes.
Yep. Code. Yes, we watched together. It's like,
I almost said Lyoko. I was like, no, that's not the right one.
Yo, shout out to Code Lyoko.
Shout out to Code Lyoko.
Code Genesis.
Fucking 2D and 3D fucking
Code
animation.
Lyoko was an anime made in Canada, which is that was the first time that ever happened. That was the only time that ever happened.
I don't know if you can call it an anime at that point, right?
I mean, anime style, I guess.
Yeah, it's the same argument as Avatar: The Last Airbender, where people it's like, oh, it's kind of anime, but it's like, yeah, but it's written by like dudes from America.
Yeah,
you
written
know?
by white people, but
yeah,
hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, of course, Blessing, we already know who you are. The audience knows who you are.
But
we are
just
talking
in
about,
case if they don't know.
Oh my God! Yeah, maybe
if you're just an anime, if you're
that
just
would be
looking for
so
anime
wild.
podcasts,
Oh my Lord!
and you somehow don't know who Blessing Adeoye Jr. is.
Yeah. That would be what. Hey, if you're just watching Kinda Anime out of nowhere, thank you. That's
Shout
wild.
out to the people that are like waiting 3 months for an episode for the only podcast they listen to.
Yeah, who are you, Blessing? Tell them who you are.
Host of Kinda Funny, well, one of the hosts of Kinda Funny Games Daily, one of the hosts of PS Love You XOXO, regular here at Kinda Funny, and host/producer here at Kinda Funny.
I like that.
Talk about video games mostly.
You're wild.
Other things every now and then. I am a wild. Listen, that's what they call me, man. Because I talk
wild
about
poppy.
Wild poppy. That's for how much I talk about video games.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, of course, we've been getting to know all of our guests. We've been really starting off with, like, what got you into anime? What were some of those animes that, like, you started with?
For me, my first anime I remember watching would have been Sailor Moon with my sisters growing up, because I had 3 older sisters. They were all obsessed with Sailor Moon when I was on Cartoon Network, and whenever it was on at night, we'd all gather around to watch Sailor Moon. So that would be the first. That would then transition into me getting into Pokemon and watching the Pokemon anime a lot.
Oh,
like many of us. Yeah, I feel like this
it
could be
feels like the inverse almost, where I feel like so many people like get into Pokemon and then they start seeing the other stuff with like Sailor Moon and all that, or Naruto. But it's funny that you had like older sisters that you started off on a different path.
But it's also interesting. A lot of people our age, right? They bring up Pokemon and Sailor Moon. It's so interesting, right? Like when I was a kid, it was Pokemon and a Sailor Moon and a Digimon was like the morning routine of the shows that were there. It's so interesting that like Sailor Moon and Pokemon were relevant to like that time. Those were
They're
the big
staples,
ones,
man.
Those were just
wild,
Cartoon Network
you know?
cartoons.
Yeah,
and I never,
it's so
I
interesting.
never thought about them as anime until later on. Like as a kid, I couldn't tell you that these were made in Japan. I couldn't tell you that these were any different from the cartoons that I was watching. They were just part of the cartoon slate on Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
And so I watched a lot of Sailor Moon as a kid. I watched that, then transitioned into Pokemon, which then transitioned into Yu-Gi-Oh. Got super into Yu-Gi-Oh. And so like a lot of my story is probably universal with a lot of people. And at the same time as that, I also had Toonami / Adult Swim that had on Dragon Ball Z. And as a kid, I liked Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Z was the, oh man, okay, they're fighting now. Like, they're throwing hands. This is more of a mature anime. And weirdly enough, as a kid, as much as I thought Dragon Ball Z was cool and I wanted to get into Dragon Ball Z, it was hard for me to watch because maybe I was too young. Maybe it was just too much for me. Maybe it was just too much standing
You also had a
around
lot of
dialogue.
episodes where it's just like, I'm powering up for 20 minutes.
Yeah. And
No,
so,
they ain't doing that for real.
oh, and Dragon Ball Z?
That's
Powering up for 20
the
minutes?
famous
That's
show
Dragon Ball
for
Z.
like, we talked about filler with like One
yeah.
Piece with Mike Mamon. Like, that is like the true definition of filler, and like Dragon Ball's famous for that.
So what's funny is that Dragon Ball Z as a kid was hard for me to get into, but what I really did get into was Dragon Ball. Just Dragon Ball proper, where Goku was a kid, came before Dragon Ball Z and all that stuff. I think the difference for it was the fact that Dragon Ball had a bit more humor to it and had a bit more lightness to it and wasn't as much of a action mature anime. Like in Dragon Ball, Goku had like his thing out. Like Goku was like, like that was this is kind of weird, kind of quirky, and it has an energy that felt more quote unquote kid friendly, even though there were some things in that show that wasn't kid friendly. So I really got into Dragon Ball as a kid. I love the tournament arc. I love seeing the dynamic between Goku, Krillin, and my guy Master Roshi, and I really enjoyed that. And then from there, I think my other one for Toonami would have been Yu Yu Hakusho, which was the anime that grabbed me the most, and to this day still is my favorite anime of all time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what was it about Yu Yu Hakusho that like really grabbed you, right? Like with our first guest, Michael Higham, who you may know.
Yeah. Never heard of him.
He talked about like having like the third eye-opening kind of moment watching certain anime, making him realize of like, oh shit, this is what this can be. Like, what was that moment for you watching Yu Yu Hakusho where you knew like, oh damn, this is the one?
Yeah, I think Yu Yu Hakusho had multiple things. I think it was the energy and aesthetic and like musical styling of it, where the soundtrack is pretty straightforward and kind of simple because they're repeating a lot of the songs throughout the franchise, but the way that the music hit, the way that when Smile Bomb the theme comes on and like every time it's a bop, let alone the recurring themes when there's a sad moment happening and you hear like the dun dun dun, and like that song starts playing, that really hit for me. The writing also just felt very grounded. It's weird because Yu Yu Hakusho is about Yusuke Urameshi and his friends, and about Yusuke becoming a spirit detective and then going on and fighting these monsters that kind of share a space with the human world. Like they're escaping into the human world, but also Yusuke and his people are also going into the demon world and all this stuff. It's weird. But that's what the show is about. It's a very supernatural premise, but the writing of it felt so grounded, just as far as, Yusuke being this badass kid who, was getting into trouble, who was a punk, who had nobody looking out for him. And at heart, he was just a good dude. Like he was chill. He would hide like the good aspects of him, right? Because on the surface, he wants to appear tough. He wants to appear as this punk. But the first episode starts off with Yusuke saving a kid who's about to get hit by a car on the road. Like this kid, his soccer ball ends up on the road. He's about to go and get it. And Yusuke jumps at him, pushes him out the way, and gets hit by a car and dies. And so an angel basically comes to him and is like, hey, you're dead, but we don't have a space for you in the afterlife yet because we didn't expect you to die. Like we didn't expect for you to save this child. Actually, like the child was supposed to get hit by the car, and like the child wouldn't have died anyway. The child actually would have gotten through with just a few broken bones or whatever. He would have lived. But you're here, you're dead, and so we're gonna put you to work. Like we're gonna basically give you a chance to get back to life. And like Yusuke was always kind of on the right side of things, even though he wanted to like come off this badass individual. And around that, you had again, a lot of good writing that felt grounded. The fights felt grounded. It was not Dragon Ball Z, at least early on, in terms of like the power scaling and the powering up and like the bigger than life, all that stuff. It wasn't really that. It was straight up street fights where like people are getting punched out, people are getting jumped. Like you are seeing the impact of a fist on a face, and people are feeling that shit. And even when it was supernatural, even when they were fighting against demons in the demon world, it was still that level of, oh, but this is street fight still. Like you're fighting demons, but it's still like you're fighting on the streets. And I think that really resonated with me as a kid and was easier for me to take in and understand as opposed to the Super Saiyans and the Kamehamehas and all this stuff that made Dragon Ball Z larger than life. Yu Yu Hakusho felt more ground level, which is why I think it worked more on me.
Yeah.
So around what time are you getting into Yu Yu Hakusho? You talked about, Sailor Moon as a kid, getting into Pokemon. Like, when did Yu Yu Hakusho hit for you?
Yu Yu Hakusho, oddly enough, I think was when I was a bit younger, like maybe I want to say around 8 years old.
Okay.
I was watching Yu Yu Hakusho.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that show, even though I knew I loved it as a kid, with each rewatch of Yu Yu Hakusho, I love it more and more. Like I went back and I rewatched it years later, fell in love with it again, probably in like high school, college, and then even recently, like I did my 4th or 5th rewatch of it, and every single time I watch it, I fall in love with it more and more because, man, do they know how to write characters in that show? And man, do they know how to write villains in that show? And know how to do arcs? Because the Yu Yu Hakusho tournament arc, I don't know if you guys have seen the tournament arc of Yu Yu Hakusho, the best tournament arc of all time. Like it is incredible. Like this, Yu Yu Hakusho put
My Hero Academia's tournament arc is out there.
Big.
Yu Yu
I like
Hakusho
that.
put, because the best arc in Yu Yu Hakusho is the tournament arc. Like that is the peak of that show. And I would go as far as to say Yu Yu Hakusho, from what I understand talking to other anime fans, put tournament arcs on the map in terms of, oh, like this is now going to be a staple.
I don't know, man. Naruto had a segment in their tournament arc where they had to take a test and they had to like cheat without getting caught and stuff. And that
Told me
was
about that.
That
Yeah,
was
he
sick.
told me about that.
I didn't think about that. No, but the way in which Yu Yu Hakusho had a couple of seasons of build up, or maybe had like one or two seasons of build up, and then you get to that tournament arc and you're seeing villains that were built up during like the previous season come through in the tournament arc and become these big forces. You're seeing every matchup really matter in terms of this is what this person's skill set and abilities are versus this person's skill set and abilities. And it's not about power scaling. It is about matchups. It is about, all right, what is your backstory? Who are you versus what is this person's
emotional
backstory?
journey on that.
The emotional journey, but then also just the strategy of this is what I bring to the table versus this is what this other person brings to the table. And the characters are so well developed. There are so many characters, and all of them get time to shine in that tournament arc, and I thought that was something special. But then, man, even after the tournament arc season, the season after that, where they introduced this villain named Sensui, that guy, oh my god, the twist with his character is so fucking dope. And yeah, like they just know how to write really interesting scenarios and really interesting characters for a show that, on its surface is this violent, let's fight each other, let's fuck each other up kind of anime, and that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I have a quick one really quick, because I'm always interested, Bear. Like I told you during mine, I didn't have cable growing up, right? And you bring up being at the age of 8 watching this, and I'm always fascinated, how did you find this, right? Like, talk about Cartoon Network, right? But like now, I think today's day and age kids have it so much easier. Crunchyroll, Funimation, all these streaming services are trying to get into different avenues, right? Different genres. And also, you're seeing it in Hot Topic. You're seeing all this anime gear like everywhere, right? At that age, how did you find this show, right? Like, was it just on one random day and now you were watching it every week? Like, how do you find something at that age?
I mean, it was just on. Like, I think that was the beauty of Tsunami, and that's why we have such shared histories with anime for a lot of people that grew up in the West watching Toonami or watching Cartoon Network, is that like you only had a handful of shows to watch. And so yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho was one that came on at night on Toonami, and I happened to be free during that time, usually during the day, and so every weekday I'll tune in to see what the next episode was. But like I think that was the story for the most part. But then there were those other scenarios where like I didn't even bring in movies into the conversation. Spirited Away was one that opened my eyes way early on, and that was me at my friend Addison's house. And Addison I bring up all the time, because he was the one that would let me borrow his video games. And so like I borrowed Shadow of the Colossus from him, I borrowed Metal Gear Solid 3 from him, I borrowed GTA, I borrowed all these incredible PS2 games that I was exposed to because Addison lent them to me. But at his place, I also watched Spirited Away for the first time, and that blew my mind. That was a thing where immediately as a kid, I'm not somebody who can recognize, or at least historically has been able to recognize, oh, this art style is, doing something different or unique, or this is a detailed, very well made piece of art right here. Spirited Away, even as a kid at, let's say 9 years old, 8 years old,
beautiful.
I was like, this is a gorgeous anime. I can't believe how good this looks. But those would be the cases of somebody else showing me that thing and me discovering it that way. Otherwise, for the most part, at least as a kid, I was discovering anime just by turning on the TV and going to a certain channel and seeing Beyblade or Digimon, or like going to a different channel and seeing what other different anime that they're showing. I didn't start to like really pick and choose my anime until I got further into like high school, college, and now.
So jumping off of that, because kind of like a story that we've seen kind of over and over again, talking to our guests, and even Mike and I just talking about our journeys, is, you get introduced to it very early on, not really understanding, like it's anime, it's something that's developed in Japan, you just think it's a cartoon show, then you phase out of it for a little bit, maybe jump back into it a little bit later on, and then the cycle kind of repeats until you're an adult and you finally kind of realize what this world is. Like after Yu Yu Hakusho that you're getting into, did that open you up to, I want to search out for other anime? Granted, we were in a very different time where you can't just fucking watch things on streaming or anything, but did that encourage you of like, okay, what's the next thing up after Yu Yu Hakusho? Or did you just kind of fall off, and then did that get revitalized anywhere? Like, what was the step after that?
Yeah, I think Yu Yu Hakusho was very much a moment in time for me, and I didn't think that I was going to find anything else like it, because I didn't realize how vast and varied anime could be and how much was out there for me. And I remember like other things coming up on Toonami, like Bleach, or I want to say even One Piece back then, because One Piece has been going on forever. But that, or Cowboy Bebop, and the list goes on of anime that was coming on in those same slots, and I wouldn't, like, they'd go over my head. I wouldn't understand them, or they just wouldn't appeal to me as much. And I very much just identified Yu Yu Hakusho as, okay, this is the thing. Like,
you hate pirates, we get it.
I hate.
There's no chance of you ever getting to one.
And there's no pirates in Yu Yu Hakusho, which made it a perfect show. But yeah, like I think for me after that was just like, all right, I'm just gonna go back and watch Yu-Gi-Oh and get very invested into like Yu-Gi-Oh as a serialized thing, right, and get into all those episodes. But when funny enough, around that era, around the age of 10, I ended up flying to Nigeria and moving to Nigeria for a couple of years and not really having access to any anime or like any of my old shows. And when I came back, that's when I started to like gain more of an autonomy of choice of, oh wait, like the anime is way more vast than I thought. Like that's when I started to learn.
So how long were you in Nigeria where you're like
only like a couple of years? Like I came back in 2007 and I was like 13 years old. And so I came back, I gained more of an access to the internet and was online more and started to see more. And funny enough, Naruto, I swear to God, by the time I left and came back, Naruto was the biggest thing in the world, and I missed it. Did Naruto start in like what, 2005 or something in the U.S.?
It was early on back around that time, because I had a very similar story where I like watched Naruto one night where they were like kind of premiering, or not premiering, but it was like a binge of like the tournament arc of Naruto one night on Toonami, and I watched that one arc and then never watched Naruto again until like way later on.
It was straight up, I left and came back and Naruto had already happened. Oh, here we go.
September 10th, 2005. Okay, yeah.
Yep. So I had flew to Nigeria the month before this. The month before I flew to Nigeria.
Yeah.
And yeah, I came back. Naruto had already happened. I had missed it and was the biggest thing. And there's an alternate reality where I didn't move to Nigeria and I'm the biggest Naruto fan, because that would have hit perfectly for me.
Yeah.
Especially because that tournament arc is very early on, and if you love tournament arcs, like that, Naruto would have grabbed you very early.
But yeah, I came back, and I think that's when I started watching a little bit more. That's when I got into things like Death Note. That's when I got into I'm trying to think of what other anime I would have gotten into like at that high school age. Because what comes to mind immediately for me would be things like, I guess, Code Geass, which I watched recently.
Right.
Devilman Crybaby, which I watched like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's around where I started to like explore more of my personal taste and choice, and enjoy anime beyond what was just available to me on Cartoon Network.
So yeah, and when you're getting more into it, when you're coming back, like what have been some of the highlights from then till now? Because obviously the big one, Yu Hakusho, but we're like outside of like Death Note and stuff, like what were some of the ones where like I like to keep quoting Higham here, where it's like opening your third eye, where you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Were there any other like big highlights ever since then?
Well, I mean, One Punch Man has been one that I really appreciate and love. I've like gone and I've watched that twice now, and I love it so much for how ridiculous it is and how good the humor is and how good it is to watch. Like the action is actually really good. So that's the one that stuck with me. I think I already said Death Note, but Death Note was one for sure that stuck with me. I watched like randomly. I watched this Devil May Cry anime that I think happened to be on Netflix.
Yeah, Devilman Crybaby was like really popping off in like
Oh
2017.
no, not Devil May Crybaby. Devil May Cry.
Oh,
The
Devil
game.
May Cry.
Video
The video
Yeah,
game.
uh-huh.
The video game had like a season of an anime
I like that.
that I watched.
That Castlevania one is nasty.
Yeah, and
I
I'd love
like
for
that Castlevania
I'd love for them
one.
to make another Devil May Cry one in the vein
Yeah.
of Castlevania.
That'd be cool.
Because I want to say most people probably didn't like the Devil May Cry anime,
I'm just gonna show you the
the
key
anime
arc.
series.
Yeah.
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
That was
okay.
it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I watched.
Did that get you into any like were you into the games?
No.
Or, like, oh, okay.
Like-
so you're just like, oh, I've never heard of this Devil May Cry. This might be a cool
Well,
anime.
no, I knew Devil May Cry as the video game, and I had played a bit of Devil May Cry, but Devil May Cry wasn't my favorite thing. Like, I didn't really care about it that deeply. But I just happened to see the anime and go, oh, there's a Devil May Cry cartoon. I should watch that. And I started watching it, and I liked it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I'm like drawing a blank on the other anime that I got into, but yeah, like I One Punch Man, Mob Psycho recently I've gotten into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was just like whatever anime was also just like popular in the ether, I would start watching.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question. Like, Blessing, of course, we know and the audience knows you're one of the busiest dudes in the business. You are constantly on the move, always doing things, a lot on the video game side, reviewing games and preparing for that. When do you find the time to watch your anime? Like, what is your nightly routine to watch some? Is it very sparingly? What does that look like for you?
I definitely have to make the time. Watching anime isn't something that's like automatically built into my schedule, like playing video games is. And lately, it has been more of a social thing. Like I watched the first season of. Oh, that's what I was trying to think of. The big people.
Attack on Titan.
Attack on Titan.
Yep.
Thank you. I watched the full first season of Attack on Titan with a friend,
Nice.
like via Discord, like on a call. And
I do that every night.
yeah, like it's such a great way to do it. It has been such a great way to do it. The latest Gundam show, Gundam Witch from Mercury, I've been watching that with friends, and we've been doing like a viewing party / marathon situation because man, like that show is really good and really entertaining. But it's either that or if I have stretches of time where I don't have a game to play or something, like this happened during this last winter break. I didn't have anything to play for a while, and so I just went in on the anime that I've been putting off and wanting to watch for a while. And so during Christmas break, I watched most of Blue Lock. I watched most of Spy Family, Mob Psycho. I started Ranking of Kings. I want to get back to Ranking of Kings because
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things. Yeah.
But yeah, I watched a handful of those shows and like really got into it. But I think for me, I just have to be in the mood for anime. That's the other thing is that it's not a thing that comes naturally in terms of turning it on and automatically getting sucked in. I got to be in the anime mode and I got to like be purposeful about watching it. Otherwise, like I'm not going to be able to pay attention fully.
So to wrap this up, we've been asking people of like what's an anime you don't see enough people talk about? Do you have one off the top of your head, or if not, just any anime that comes to mind that you feel is like underrated that more people should be checking out?
I like that question. It's a really good question. I
learned from the best.
Yeah, Devilman Greg Miller, of course. Devilman Crybaby is one that I bring up. I think more often than the average anime consumer, and that one when it came out on Netflix really hit me. And I like if you don't know Devilman Crybaby, it's a fucked up anime. There's a lot of sin going on in that show. A lot of people doing bad things. fornication, drugs, all the things the Bible tells you not to do.
Stuff.
All those things are present in Devilman Crybaby in spades. But when I watched it, like that show attached to me, and like I couldn't get it off. I could not watch that show off of me. And part of it is all the graphic content, but I think part of it also is just like it's like watching a train crash. You're just watching all this fucked up shit, and it's kind of addicting. And also the story is good. Like also like the writing of stories is pretty entertaining. And so that's one that I would be interested to see more people check out and talk about and have more discussion about. Like not underrated, the one I'm about to talk about, but like the original Dragon Ball, I think gets overshadowed a lot by Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super and other things. And that original Dragon Ball show, I'd say, is really, really good. And it's worth checking out if somehow you missed it and ended up just watching Z and other things. I'd put that in there too. And yeah, Code Geass was one that Tim recommended a couple years ago, and man, is that show really good?
Liked it.
Like the politics of it, the chess game of it, seeing the main character Lelouch really have to think and figure out how he's going to go about his strategy to like not get caught and like do all this stuff, I thought was really, really good and really engaging. And so those would be the three that I shout out.
Hell yeah. Well, Blessing, thank you so much for joining us on episode 3 of Kinda Anime. Again, for the people out there who might be only watching Kinda Anime, Kinda Funny content, where can people keep up with you, where you may be talking about anime every once in a while, but definitely video games and things of that nature?
Of course, right here, youtube.com/kindafunnygames. And also on my Twitter, @BlessingJr. And my threads, @BlessingJr. And Instagram, @BlessingJr.
Oh.
Hive, @BlessingJr.
No more.
Blessing Jr.
Man.
It's all
Buzz,
there.
buzz.
It's all there.
Well, Blessing, thank you so much for joining us for Kinda Anime. That was our final guest for this episode, but that's not the end of the episode for episode 3 of Kinda Anime. Mike, let's figure out where the One Piece is. I want to give one more big thank you to everyone who's been on Kinda Anime for episode 3. It means a lot to me that so many people wanted to come through. Shout out to Lisa, shout out to Kate, Mike Mamon, Blessing, Michael Higham. It was fantastic to have them all on and share their stories of what got them into anime. But Mike, that's not the end of the episode. We have 2 more quick hits here to wrap up the show. Mike, where is the One Piece? Let me on the last episode real quick.
Lay it on me.
I was on episode 86 and you were on episode 299.
Whew.
What's the update?
I am happy to report that I have not watched much, but I am on episode 317. So I have now concluded the Water 7 / Eddie's Lobby journey. And Barrett, let me tell you what, it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming. It's special. No major spoilers, but I will say it ends. I mean, this is a fantastic arc. This is the best out of the big 3 arcs that I've had so far.
Okay.
I love the most. I think every character got their chance to shine, grow, and become something more than what they just were, right? Like, it's been a lot of Luffy, been a lot of Zoro. Like, I think everybody gets their small moments, but everybody got a moment in this, and that was pretty special.
And, yeah, especially because I can only imagine now, like, I feel like if you don't have the entire crew yet, you have to have, like, most of them. So that's cool.
And we're building. Of course, we went there, and I'll tell you what, awesome storyline going on at Water 7 and Eddie's Lobby. Like, there's a lot going on, from politics to people in power to then, of course, a small organization trying to stop that, the government and all that. Like, it was very,
that's
very
the stuff
cool.
I want to get to one day, because that shout out to a friend of the show, Ian Preschel, who really loves One Piece. And like, to me, like talking about my journey into anime earlier in the episode, like, One Piece was just like a fun like adventure of the week. And my friend Ian's like, no, eventually, like, yeah, like that's the pitch, right? Is that it's like all of these kids who are just gonna go look out for treasure, and then it's about the fucking government and how they're controlling everything, and how like they're gonna like we're gonna fucking burn it all down. And I'm like, what? That's what this show turns into? That's insane. I can't wait to get to it in 10 years.
And so the end of it all, as people know, if you have watched all the way up to that point, there's a very moving and special moment at the end of it. And I was really blown away with how well done they did. It was very, very good. I'm so happy with it. And I'm excited to see. Now the fun part is when we completed these big 3 arcs, right? The question is, where do you go now? Right? Like, what is it? Is it going to be one-offs? Is it going to be a small journey? Do we immediately segue into some giant arc after this? Like, what will be the
Interesting.
journey time.
So
It's
did
always
it feel
fun.
almost? I know to put it into Marvel terms is a little like whatever, but did it feel like almost like the end game a little bit? And then it's like, all right, what do we build up to next? Or
They did a great job on building up what to next.
Okay,
So
okay.
immediately you have a great send off, and immediately right afterwards you get the tease of what is next.
Okay.
And there is so much more on the Grand Line than I ever could have expected. The One Piece
exciting.
is still real. The One Piece is still out there, and there's even more pieces. And I think we're going to get a lot of
There's
cool
2 piece?
backstories. There's cool backstories to a lot of jabronis on this boat that I think we're going to see, which is really special. So I want to give the double thumbs up. Ennis
yeah.
Lobby and Water 7 is my favorite out of the big 3 thus far. I think if you can get past, I know a lot of people are halfway on Alabaster. I think people will like Skypiea, but I didn't love it.
Okay.
This is the one. This
Okay.
is the big one that you'll enjoy.
So yeah, on the last episode of Kind of Anime, I was on episode 86, and now I'm on episode 87.
There we go. Hey, that's just fine. That's
Like I
just
said
fine.
earlier, it's been a very busy quarter for me. So yeah, like One Piece has definitely taken the back seat a little bit. So still in the middle of Chopper's kind of onboarding
Yes.
into the. I think the last thing I remember was like the old lady that he hangs
Him
out
in the
with,
dock.
and she's like,
Yep.
"Yo, like." Go be a pirate. Like go fucking go out and live your life, you know? So,
What a beautiful
So I'm
one.
still in the middle of that. So I don't have much to say, but since the last episode, the trailer for the Netflix live action adaptation for One Piece came out. Mike, what are your thoughts?
It captured the fun. It captured the adventure that I'm looking for. There was moments where I was like, oh, I feel this. Like, I am excited. But of course, I think everybody has this pre-canned notion of like, these live actions aren't good, right? We're coming hot off of Cowboy Bebop. People did not like Death Note, right? Like, you look at these and you go, right? And so my worry is you saw it and you go,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I will say, I think the actors really captured the characters well, right? Like when you see Luffy on there,
Oh, yeah.
there is a childlike willingness of adventure and happiness
Yeah.
that like is hard to portray
Yeah.
as a live action character, right? And I think this guy did it. I was excited to see him on the screen.
Yep.
When Nami starts talking about navigation and getting the crew together, you were like, oh, this is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm a little worried, but I will say this. I'm in. I'm
Yeah.
excited to watch this. I've watched all the other ones. I'm going to watch this. I'm going to hope for the best.
This is yeah. I'm on a similar note, and like I'll take myself back to before Cowboy Bebop came out, where it was like, all right, these actors are selling me. They're getting the vibes of these characters. But then Cowboy Bebop comes out, and it wasn't like. I don't think it was a fault of the actors. I think what they were given in script work and just like the overall vibe, there's something to me in anime that just like we said, there's something that can be pulled off in that medium of dark, serious tones, especially with Cowboy Bebop. That's very like fucking, I know that's 90s anime, but like it feels more like late 80s existential, going around space, but then can also be goofy and have characters like
Yeah.
Ed. And then you live adapt Ed and it's fucking weird, right? And so like I have that same little like hopeful with the actors, because yeah, I was sold on like the trailer with the actors and how they're portraying the characters of like, okay, they're hitting the notes I want to, but then everything else around the actors, that's where I was like less like like I know there's more detail in some of the islands that we've seen in like very, very basic forms before in the anime, getting to expand on some like towns and stuff like that, which is cool, but there's something lost in translation there for me, where like the characters feel like the, you know, bringing back like their own kind of different like interpretation of what the One Piece charm was, but the world doesn't for whatever reason. So that, yeah, I'm in a similar kind of like crossroads.
I have one ask. Like my true ask of this is I want us to get a season 2. I think that's where Cowboy Bebop really hurt me was I don't want to say enjoyed, but like I had a fine time with Cowboy Bebop. I liked those actors on the screen. I loved their costumes and how they looked. It's like, give me one more. It just felt like we tried and like, sure, maybe it didn't hit the mark for many, but like, why not one more, right? Like, let's see if we can refine it and you can do better the next time. So my one ask, especially for One Piece, is like, let's do 2 seasons. Like lock it in and like do this one, take the feedback, see how you can get it better, and give me a season 2, because I think that Cowboy Bebop would have been better if they did a season 2. I think they could have.
What do you think the long game for One Piece could be, right? Because like, let's say yes, like we're getting greenlit for season 2, 3, maybe 4. Is there a place to stop it? Because there's no way they do fucking thousands of episodes.
That's the issue, is right. You probably could never do
and
that.
That like even when One Piece was just announced, when we didn't have casting or anything, it's like, how are you gonna do this though? Like, what's the goal here?
Let's say this: if it was to be a quote unquote success and people really got behind it, what I would do if I had that choice is I would then take one of the big arcs or maybe a couple of the big arcs, make a semi-large movie out of each one. Maybe make just like refined movies. Say, hey, I don't have you guys for a long time because you're going to grow old or you're going to go on to something new.
Right.
We can't do 1,000 of these, right? Hey,
Luffy's like almost, I know there's some stuff later on, but like for a long time, Luffy's the same fucking age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can we pick a big 3 and let's do 3 Netflix-style movies and have fun with it? That's what I would personally want to see. Because, like you said, I don't think we're doing that. It will, how do you do this?
I don't know,
It
man.
would be really interesting to see what season 1 captures.
Yeah,
right?
like how...
Because we know they're all there, right?
Yeah,
they
that's
have
true.
Sanji, they
and
got
that's
Nami.
Like 50
so like
episodes.
That
Granted,
is a
there's
lot.
50, like half of those episodes.
There's
half
filler.
the episodes is like them just standing around for like a little bit, just
but
like
they're
filling
together,
time,
right?
so,
Or like, do you take creative risk and maybe you've worked with the team that's created One Piece and you say, hey, how do we change that? How do I get these people on a boat without having to do? I think Arlong Park is a must. I think Arlong Park could be really, really dope, right? You got Buggy the Clown. Like, is there others that we could skip? Maybe we don't have to do Usopp's Island with the cat guy.
Yeah.
Maybe you know
maybe
what I mean?
maybe like a shortening of the Sanji stuff as well.
Exactly. But how do you shorten? How do you refine? How do you cut pieces that still make it fun? Because like those jabronis are on the boat.
Well,
and I don't think we'll see it like. I don't think the end is like, hey, we're all on the boat. Like that would be an awful way to end because then like we're not going to get season 2.
At this point, Usopp's there for Arlong Park, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe
that's
Nami's
probably where
the
you
last
end it.
one.
Yeah, I think
Nami's
that's
the
where.
last one.
Yeah, because Arlong Park is such a good one, and
It's
that
so
like
good.
that would make sense for a season 1 end cap. Is that so?
But like then of
That'll
course
be
people
interesting.
will bash the CGI of like how do we make the fish people look cool? But like man, if you could get
that's gonna be tough.
if you could get Captain Arlong, that big old fish guy on there,
Yeah.
maybe get a cool little squid guy. Like you said, they don't have the money like a Pirates of the Caribbean, but like they made the squid dude look cool in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They could make these dudes look cool.
Well, that's where the One Piece right now is currently, everybody. To wrap up the show, we didn't have any homework today for this episode, but we are bringing homework for episode 4. I looked back at some of the old comments throughout all the first 2 episodes of Kind of Anime, seeing what people are throwing out there. And I think there's one that people definitely want, and I think it's going to be more up your alley. It's going to be more of like an introduction to this type of anime for me. So our homework for the final episode of Kind of Anime releasing later this year, we're going to watch Haikyuu. Which is the volleyball anime. That's and I don't even I think that's maybe how I say it correctly. Maybe it's just Haikyuu, but I think it's Haikyuu. Yeah, it's a sports anime, which is not usually a thing that I ever watch outside of like Skate the Infinity is the closest thing I've ever watched when it comes to a sports anime. So this is going to be an introduction for me, and this is a beloved anime for people who are into sports anime, and you've recently got into it with Blue Lock and all that stuff. So that'll be our homework. We're going to watch just the first arc, first 14 episodes. I know some of you out there are like, especially with Mike, who's a big dub watcher, of like, Barrett, the English dub is really hard to get. We have our ways. We have our ways.
Okay.
We have our ways.
We will get it. We will get it.
We'll get to it. So yeah, that'll be our homework for the episode 4 of Kind of Anime. So yeah, there you go. There you have it. That has been another episode of Kind of Anime. We'll see you for the final episode later down the line this year. We'll talk about our thoughts on the first arc of Haikyuu, more about the current season of Jujutsu Kaisen, and Mike, I'm going to reveal it right now, our topic of the show for the final episode of Kind of Anime. We're going to share our top 5 favorite anime of all time. So think about that list of how that works in your head and get prepared for some fun conversations there. Anyways, thank y'all so much. Again, thank you to all of our guests who appeared on this episode. And until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.